I'm gonna go live now. So it's going up. Just take a look at the YouTube channel and see if it pops up. We can talk, so it's not recording any audio right now. So see if it pops. Take probably a couple seconds.
Periodically refreshing. Okay, yeah,
okay,
I see it.
Okay.
Ah, nice. That's a great one.
Yeah.
That photo of you.
So we'll just wait for a couple minutes and see if people pop in. We don't have to start exactly at 4, but we'll see. You have work stuff today you got to do, or
right now, jobs is a couple of matches.
Speaking of which, by the way, I found another box of magic cards.
Oh, really?
Stuff, yeah, stuff that either you left behind.
I got like a bag and a box with you, right?
Yeah, you left a box that has old magic cards and some like mats and stuff like that you left behind.
That was my kit for
right.
For traveling.
I still have those, so if you.
Yeah, it's more than would be.
Well, it's like one medium, small size box, and there's other stuff that's not in the box, but it would then package together to be bigger.
I know you have some art that my bag of like random junk from when I was.
There's like there's definitely a couple other things, random stuff in there somewhere, but it's called downstairs. But when we move out, just put it into a location. Come up. I don't know if you're planning to come up. Planning to, you can grab it then.
When do I have to get tickets for that? That's already passed, hasn't it?
Well, right now, it's not tickets. It's for exhibitor registration. You can register for tabling if you want to, or if you're just gonna get tickets. Am I exhibiting? Yeah.
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 Anything to show? Man, I have been so not.
Well, I think you really enjoyed the show, and well, we can talk about this stuff during live too. Actually.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see. About like just a few people in there, but I figure we just talk. I don't have to necessarily acknowledge the people there just yet. I'm gonna switch it over now.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Need to mute this. Oh, it is muted.
Hey, what's up, you guys? We're about to start up at the moment. Welcoming a guest. There's just a few people in our room right now. Hopefully, it'll start to build up as we go through the day. It's kind of a surprise pop-up stream, as always, which I maybe planned a bit more before class to kind of announce this. But hopefully, we'll get a few people in hand, and it'll go through. Questions are welcome, obviously, in the chat, and I'll try to reply to them best we can. There is a bit of a delay here, so if you ask a question, there might the answer or reply to that might come up a little bit. Patient with us when it comes to that part of it. And I just want to introduce our guest for today. We have Izzy, and Izzy's an old friend of mine. We've known each other for a long while, and I just wanted to spend a moment to kind of just hang about and chat. And this series that I want to do is going to be more about having art talks, and we won't be drawing live for you guys today, this session. So if you're looking for that, where else? Today we're just having conversations, talking about history, past, and present stuff that's going on, future event stuff, just kind of shooting the shit. So, Izzy, if you don't mind, kind of introduce yourself. Please go ahead, man.
Hello, gang. I am Izzy Merano, longtime friend of Peter Hahn. We went to high school together before 4 times. I'm a concept artist, art director, creative director, and writer. I've also been teaching for quite a while, where Pete went the dynamic sketching route. I went towards, we had another teacher that was more painting. I went the painting route, so a lot of my lessons are about paintings and that. What else did we cover? Just like general history?
Yeah, general history is fine too.
So let's see. After graduation, I ended up in video games.
Yeah,
I've been working. If I want to say, my first gig being with Neversoft.
Right.
I worked on Gun, a number of Tony Hawk games. I helped out Guitar Hero. From there, I jumped to Sony Santa Monica, where I ended up on God of War.
Yeah.
And I worked on that for quite a while.
Yeah.
I did 4 different God of War games. War 3, God of War Ascension, and then the PSP games. Which um, that I went freelance, did solo things, started working for a whole bunch of different studios, branched out from games. Oh shit, I skipped one. 2007, got picked up at Watsy's Magic Cards. I've been doing Magic Cards quite a while now.
Yeah.
I'm an old man in Magic Card Town. But yeah. Ooh, are we too quiet?
No, I think we're good. I just turned up the audio a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. I've had issues on my stream with audio as well. Okay. Anyway, freelancing in LA was kind of kooky because cost of living in LA is insane.
Yeah.
And when you're freelancing, it's kind of tough to justify, living in Santa Monica or something like that with 3,500, a month in rents and all that good stuff. So that's when I decided to leave LA. I moved onto a sailboat, kind of freelancing, and then started working on my own IPs. Peter and I have been doing IP development together for basically since high school. I mean, we've been making comics and like random art stories and things like that for ages.
Yeah.
And school wise, that was kind of our focus, was IP development, concept art, but there was a lot of building out worlds and concepts for sort of transmedia publication.
Right.
So yeah, I ended up just kind of going deep into that while I was living on the boat. No pun intended. And out there, I wrote a bunch of stuff. And COVID hit, and decided to come back home after living, aboard in Mexico for 5 years, something like that. It was 5 and change. I can't remember exactly anymore. It's been a while. Long COVID and all that. Got back here, got back into video games, animation. I was first art director for a small studio out east. Jumped to art directing for the Magic the Gathering animated series with Netflix. That gig wrapped up last year, and then I've just kind of been doing some various consulting gigs with creative direction. Okay. So a lot of still in the IP development realm, and that's kind of been the focus as of late. So that's the quick and choppy.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Are you getting audio lag from me, Pete, or is that just on YouTube?
It might be just on YouTube. You might want to just listen to GoToMeetings directly. I don't know if I'd be.
I'm fine. I'm seeing notes in chat where audio says that mine is kind of
soft a little bit, so it might be a little bit low. I turned up the audio on mine, but because it's coming directly from my speaker going into OBS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if your audio is. No, you don't. But hopefully it's okay for anybody who's in stream right now. If it's still really, really low, let us know. I'll try to adjust the volume on my end. But I think it should be fine for the time. My mic should be able to pick things up. Anyways, funny how we can kind of crush all of our experiences into a couple of paragraphs of descriptions of things that we've done in the past. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But just to give you guys a little bit more, from my end, I did meet Izzy when I was 14. I went into high school, was it 94, 95? No, I'm sorry, it was 93 maybe.
I think it might have been 94? Later, because when does high school start for us? That's 14, right?
Yeah.
So it was 94 for me when I started. So you would have been 95.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it was 95. 93 is when I moved to Oregon. 95. When I started high school. And so you were like one of the first people that I met during high school. We had a homeroom, which is Ohana for us in high school. It was like arts. I've told people this in live stream that he started in a high school that was Art Magnets High School. That's how it was promoted, as an Art Magnets High School. Special kid. It was more of a place where it's kind of random kids who have interests of odd things kind of were brought together.
You're far too kind.
Well,
it was a school for weirdos that didn't anywhere else, and you and a few other people kind of turned it into a real art school, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
we had art programs, but it was almost secondary to just kind of being a place to keep the folks that didn't quite fit in. But yeah, you were. I remember because one of the reasons I was one of the first people you met was our Ohana homeroom program required that freshmen kind of link up with other students and kind of get shown around, right?
Yeah.
Where weren't you like my like adopted freshman or something? It was something like that. I can't quite remember, but like I think am I misremembering? That's a funny thing. We're talking about 30 plus years ago or something like that, and half of my memories are like misremembered stuff anyway.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that's the case, but I seem to remember there was a program where it was like adopt a freshman or something like
It
that.
was
And
something like that.
We ended up kind of hanging out.
Yeah. No, I came in at first as an interview, and they would show me around the school. And then when I went into Ohana, I think it was kind of more of an unofficial thing.
Hmm.
I think so. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
that makes sense.
It says
Yeah,
low. Hold on.
back then, so we drew together all the time, right?
Yeah, we did.
We would hang out, play video games, and draw.
I'm
I
gonna
learned
check
a lot from people.
I'm gonna check the audio real quickly. It says everyone's saying it's kind of low, so I'm gonna see if I can bring in another like into OBS real fast.
Yeah, it should be okay. Like an audio from screen or your real tech or whatever.
Yeah.
Here, let me listen to it on the.
Yeah, I don't know if there's gonna be a adjustment to this. It's kind of it says a little bit low. Well, the meters on it are going up, so it's hitting the numbers that I wanted to. Not necessarily.
It actually sounds fine to me.
Does it sound fine?
Interesting.
It might be on other people's audios. You
it's
guys,
a little bit robotic, but
yeah,
it's kind of the standard compression you would expect from
right.
jumping to two servers.
Of all the audio, I would think. Well, like I said, I think in the recording it should be okay. Give us more feedback for those of you that are out there, a little bit mid to low. So turn up your guys' speakers if you can. And in this kind of last minute situation, this is kind of the best I can do. We'll figure it out. And we'll be doing more stream. Audio's fine now. Okay, cool. Thank you, Boris. Okay. Anyways, yeah, appreciate that. So, anyways, that's kind of our history between me and Izzy. We've known each other for a long while now. So I'm 41, 42 now, 43.
I just turned 43.
You just turned 43
of the month.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I turned 42 in May, so we've known each other since we were 14. I think you're one of the longest friends I've known, and staying in connection together since, which is wild.
Yeah.
So a lot of ups and downs in our own lives and things that we've experienced. Anyways, this is kind of an unofficial chat. For those of you that are joining in right now, this is Izzy, everybody. And if you go to the description, you'll find a lot of his website, YouTube stuff, and also Instagram. So if you want to see his work, please go on there. You'll see a lot of his paintings. His YouTube channel will start to hopefully grow with more content. I'll be going on to his channel as well too, back and forth. But in any case, there's something that hopefully we can do more of together as we go into the future. Right now, I just wanted to just chat. I wanted to do this because it was more just as a way to have various content where I can not only just do sketching and drawing, but also have guests and people on and just kind of talk about stuff that we just normally talk about. Like we were talking about Lightbox right now. I am planning to be there. I think Lightbox is in November or something like this. So I'll have a table with Kim Jong-gi's passing and Super Ronnie not really doing anything involvement wise for the show. They asked me if I'm going to obviously be back there. So I'm still kind of stepping in and doing shows and tables on my own. So Ronnie doesn't really back it. No, you haven't done a show in a while. When was the last time you did one?
The last time I did one was when we tabled together at Comic-Con, was it? And we did the Thought Gun Shells release, which was a book of IPs that we built together.
Yeah.
That was 2012, I want to say.
Man, really? Okay.
Something like that. I think I did join you on a couple of tables, but it was your table more. Well, that's not true. I did do a Comic-Con where I think I might have had my own table.
Yeah, but you also
it was right around that time. Maybe it was. What?
No, you used to also do the Magic card shows too.
Yeah, that was different. So back in the day, Wizards of the Coast used to fund the artists to go to the different events where they'd fly us out, put us up, and then we would do art event or just signings and things like that. So I did quite a bit of that
Yeah.
too for a while. Especially I took anything that was international, just
Right.
get some stamps on my passport, pull out in the world. It was really cool. It was
How
a great
how
program.
how different were those kind of shows compared to like Comic Con San Diego? Because obviously Wizard of the Coast
Super
is
different.
bringing you in as a guest, but you're kind of like a highlighted artist, right?
Yeah, yeah. Usually with like an event where like a Grand Prix or something like that, they would have a stable of 2 to I'd say 6 artists, usually on the lower end of numbers, and we would be there to sign cards for fans and hang out, sell merch. We're sort of like a side event. Whereas
Oh,
Comic Con, it's all booths.
right.
It's very much the entertainment oriented. Whereas most of these events, the orientation is more around the competition, the gameplay. So they'll have the tables set up and the arenas where all the different players are, you know, going through the different tiers until someone wins. That was generally the focus with those things.
I see.
But
I see.
yeah, when we did shows together, that was for the artists or for the product
Right.
specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But I definitely did one more recently
okay. Yeah, I don't remember anymore. All the shows kind of blend
than.
together at some point, and it's hard to remember like what we were doing, what we showed. Obviously, the one that I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like was a direct collaboration was when we did the shotgun shell stuff, and we were stories and using maggot and all that kind of, which was fun. So I don't know. Are you planning to maybe do more shows in the future? I mean, are you still doing the Wizard of the Coast stuff as well, or?
I'm still doing magic cards, but I've ramped that down quite a bit to focus more on writing and IP development.
Mhm.
So really, the only thing keeping me from shows these days is just having products to show. A lot of the things that I do, um, like I've been working on pilot scripts for TV shows or longer form narratives, sequential short stories, things like that
Yeah.
are intended for kind of a production that's going to involve other people, and that's harder to kind of take to a table on your own.
Yeah.
But I would like to get back into it. I mean, the best thing about events like that, really, way more than selling stuff, is just meeting other people
Yeah.
that are doing the same things you are, building up that network.
Right.
Like that. I really miss that. The first Lightbox you invited me to um, was the very first one. What was that?
2019.
3 years ago? four
Yeah.
years ago? Okay. I went to that one with Peter at in Pasadena, and that was my first event in a number of years. I'd been living out on the boat, basically being a weird sea hobo all by myself. Just me and my dog wandering the ocean, and it was like being reinflated. Like I'd been working on my own for so long and kind of was feeling down about the work and my ideas and things like that, and just being around people that are tough, like lighting the fire in the bellows again. Great.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I got to do it again.
I would. You didn't go
Yeah.
last year. Was there? I forgot what was the reason why. Was it just timing, schedule?
It was a timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go last year. It was just a timing thing. That I didn't know what was going to be happening with the Magic the Gathering animated series,
Right.
and what future projects I was kind of collaborating on at the time.
Yeah.
So it was just too much up in the air. But I think if I can plan it out, I am a terrible planner. I am not very organized. So I'm absolutely the kind of guy that's going to get a ticket in the last 2 weeks before an event.
Mm.
So hopefully, my plan is this year, tax season, down and start focusing on putting something together. I
Yeah.
think this year it'll probably be just a visitor, um, a visitor tag rather than a booth.
Okay.
I just don't have anything to show at the moment.
I
You
mean,
know how it
that's
is.
that's what I was talking about earlier before we started with that. I think it'd be good for you just
Yeah.
to visit again because I think just continue to be involved in the community is it's a big part of why I think you can benefit from it. When you're like pressured to do something with a show, I know that you don't respond well to it. It's not
Yeah.
within your routine of things that you do because for me it's like shows like this were such a routine of an activity that I was constantly doing. becomes normalized. It's not because
Mhm.
you don't have the capacity to do it. It's just that it's not within normal
Yeah.
stuff that you kind of work on. So I think it'd be good to get involved still to show up. I think last year was awesome. I had reservations of actually being involved with the show again this year, honestly, mainly because I want to do more stuff of like this, walking around talking to
Mhm.
people, like interviewing people, doing videos of stuff, and I don't mind tabling and selling things also too. I like being with because last year there was no chance to walk around and see anybody live at the show. Like
Mhm.
afterwards, great we can, but not during. I kind of miss being able to just see what people have. I don't want to do that next.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely kind of the more satisfying part of it, right? Like being able to go around, having to sit at the table and just fielding, purchases and questions rather than, going and exploring and seeing new things. Like you almost need a staff,
yeah,
right? Do this. Like you got to have a couple of people
yeah,
that are helping out and table just so you can get around and do that stuff.
right.
Would you ever consider doing something like you were just talking about, where it would be like a instead of tabling at all, show up with a camera and a microphone and
That's
just go around interviewing people?
I was playing with that idea for this year. So when
Ooh.
Superani was asking me, he's like, "Hey, do you want to come back and have the tables?" Because Superani still has reservations of all the Comic Con shows and stuff like that. A lot of the big shows like Comic Con, I'll definitely table at because it's my one that I review new products in. But Lightbox is like it's such a so many of the people that we know and we all come together and congregate right there, and it only happens a couple times in a year where I can actually. I've done tabling enough. I've been doing it for since like 2008, Comic Con shows and whatnot. So after every year of doing that, it's like I think using this platform or other things to kind of go out and videotape and review and talk to more people, I think would be a nice change of pace. If anything, I still like
Yeah.
tabling, but I like the idea of having no pressure, like sitting there and having to like, which is fine as well too. I do also like interacting a lot, engaging, talking to people. Well, I don't know. We'll see. I haven't made that call just yet. I'm sure I'll talk to Superani about what is here. And if I just table normally, I will do so. Hopefully, you'll be there as well too. I'll probably end up taking that space with a couple of the people from Superani that would normally have sat there with Kim Jong. But yeah, it'll be fun. Where it goes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So you're just working
Yeah.
on Magic card stuff right now. You said right now. Is there anything you're doing other personally?
I am. Yeah, I have a couple of magic cards for this new set that they've built out. I've been I've been slowing down on magic cards pretty hard. I mean, at my peak, I was doing like uh 7 in a month.
Holy crap!
Even I think the most I ever did was in the double digits
How
in a
how
single
how long would
for
you
a single
have
day.
deadline wise for one of the card illustrations, and how long would it actually take you to do it?
Oh yeah, totally. So the general system for getting a art commission from Wizards of the Coast for Magic or really any project, it's they have been doing it. I mean, they commission 1,000 plus cards every year, so they've got it down to basically a perfected science.
I see.
How it works is you get an email from an art director or art directors, usually with one or two waves that are coming out, and they'll say, "Hey, we're looking for artists that want in on this wave. Let us know if you're available and how many can you take." And it's
Right.
totally up to you. Depending on. I mean, I have a feeling that they probably organize their their artist stable based on you know reliability with number of cards. So like
Yeah.
if you were new and you were like, just give me 30 cards, they'd be like, I don't think so. How about you start with a couple?
Yeah.
But as you know, I've been doing this now since 2007. I'm bad at math, but that's almost 20 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a while.
Is that crazy?
It's
I'm
crazy.
bad at math.
No, it's fine. You're in the
Like
ballpark.
17 years?
Yeah, you're in
Is
the
that
ballpark.
17 years? Something like that.
We were
Anyway,
we were both terrible at
so
math.
yeah. So I've been doing it a while, so they'll generally trust that number. They'll say, "Hey, how many can you take?" I'll say, for example, with this latest, I'll take two. And what happens is very shortly, usually the next day or the day after that, you'll get an email that has commission on it. It'll have the art ID, purchase order number, the art ID being like a number that's going to be used in house.
Mm.
And then after that, it'll have sort of the working title. So to kind of rewind it a little bit, what happens with Magic is they have a design team that works out the game mechanics of all the different cards and how the
Oh,
cards
okay.
interplay
Interesting.
and sort of the things that you do with them. Yeah, and they don't have any art for that. They just have like a rough idea
Right.
based on the world that they've built for that specific set and the mechanics, and then they'll put together, the art directors will put together like a little assemblage of like, here's what we need. We need to see, a kobold monster. And that kobold is like a tricksy guy, and he's
Mm.
gonna, be throwing knives at I don't know, a paper lantern.
Right.
Totally random.
Yeah.
But sometimes cards are like that. They're so random, you're like, what the hell? But that's kind of how it works. So after the number, you get this little brief description. And what's really great about them is they'll put underneath the description focus. So the focus is what they want you to really make the centerpiece of your painting. Usually it's like communicating a specific idea or a moment, because you can have really complex battle scenes and things like that. And the focus might be something like one character with a fireball for a hand, or a dragon's broken tooth. So they'll give you that focus, they'll give you a background, and then they'll give you any relating reference, and you're off to the races. Traditionally, you'll get a month. You get like a a week or two for the sketches,
Mm.
and then a week or two, or sometimes a full month for the final, depending on complexity.
Oh, wow.
The amount of time, it's really kind of up to you how you break down that stuff. Thing to remember is, at least for me, this is the constant struggle when it comes to doing freelance artwork. Is you have this drive to try and do something that's really amazing, that's like using all the best of your skill.
Mm.
The other side is you're getting paid this amount of money, and at a certain point, you're making that less than minimum wage
Yeah.
doing this painting.
Right.
So how many hours can you allocate per paint?
Yeah.
They've just kind of raised the price on it,
It's good.
in terms of giving a little bit more. But traditionally, before, you would get around $1,000 per paint. And so, with that in mind, you would want to try and like make sure you need to be really comfortable and knowledgeable with your own kind of work speed and what you can deliver and how
Mm.
long it takes you to deliver that.
Right.
And then you kind of need to divide that down based on how much money you're actually going to get paid
Mm.
per hour for the thing that you're working on. So you may make a painting that's amazing, took you 100 hours, but for $1,000, you're
Yeah.
making, again, math bad. So I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my point there. Is like, see, you have to kind of work that stuff out. Me personally, gas, I generally will allocate, like a day to a sketch, or I'll do all the sketches in a single day,
Mm.
do them real quick, Photoshop or Procreate. I
Yeah.
love Procreate for sketching. It's
Yeah.
so good. And then I'll allocate usually maybe 2 to 3 days for the final painting.
Oh.
And with that, I'm not coming out ahead with that. Basically, I would say most of your kind of seasoned artists, your veteran artists that also have other jobs, are mostly like myself doing magic cards as kind of a vanity thing,
Mm.
just trying to stay connected with this major IP, and you're regularly churning out work. It's almost like being paid to kind of paint something cool that you probably would have painted anyway,
Yeah.
because it doesn't quite it would be very difficult to. There are some artists that totally pull this off. I'm trying to remember the names of a few, but man, they are so fast and they churn such great artwork that they
Mm.
could easily make this a full time job and be paid very well.
Huh.
But a lot of us, myself, it's sort of like it's a side gig just to kind of keep the talents sharp, your art talents,
Yeah. Yeah.
making
But how do you
there.
balance, or how do you even predict how many hours you actually do need to allocate for that piece? So, like for instance, when I have students asking about life or work balance, or even finishing even simple things like homework, and how do I get my deadline complete for the following week or whenever it's due? Usually, the recommendation or something that I want people to understand through experience is they should know how long things take them to do stuff. Whether it's a sketch, a drawing, or
Mhm.
a painting. You know, like can you predict how much time you would actually need for certain paintings already by this point?
Yeah, I can generally predict. You know, not down to hours, but usually I'd say by day
Okay.
how long a painting would take, depending on complexity. That said, some I get paintings all the time where I think it's going to be super hard and it ends up being crazy easy. And sometimes I get paintings that I think are going to be cakewalk when I start,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then are so difficult in the end. So it's this weird kind of trade off that happens. I think it's really about kind of knowing how you work as an artist.
Sure.
So being, I am a world class procrastinator,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of artists are. So I plan for that. I know that I'm gonna put some time into this in the beginning when I'm super like gung ho about it, but then I also know that I need to save some time near the end
Yeah.
in case I let things get out of hand,
Right.
which happens sometimes, probably more than sometimes,
Sure.
right? So I plan for that sort of thing. And in terms of knowing those hours, the only way you can do that is through experience. I'm sure you've told your students this.
Yeah.
Uh, it takes time to familiarize yourself with the methodology that you go through, your specific system creating.
Yeah.
Um, but then after you've done that, I think the most important thing is to again go back and look at what your income is
Yeah.
versus the amount of time you're putting into it.
Sure.
And I think where a lot of my students and mentees like have faced issues is when they want to do something so good. They want to do good, and I totally get that. But at the same time, losing the value that's actually being paid for that thing by
Mm.
virtue of giving more than that thing necessarily warrants.
Yeah.
Like it can be such a tough balance to make.
Yeah.
Have you experienced this?
Yeah, to a degree, but the thing is, I'm not really doing a lot of illustration work. A lot of times, it's
Mm-hmm.
like early pre-production sketch kind of stuff, early concept pieces, not really polished or finishing illustration. So my timeline is a
Mm-hmm.
bit different, and because I can predict my own sketching methods, it's pretty easy to kind of plan for those short kind of builds because it doesn't take me
Yeah.
hundreds of hours to produce a sketch. It's going to take a couple hours here and there, so it's easier for me to predict what's
Mm-hmm.
going to come out from that, and then how much time I actually need. So it's because
Yeah.
the kind of work I'm doing is different. What primarily in your job, it kind of alters it. A question here from Great Voice Art is: in Magic the Gathering, if if it's not the main moneymaker when it comes to paintings on Magic the Gathering, what is it for most artists? What are they doing for other kinds of income? Full time jobs, and they're doing this on the side, or do they do culmination to things? What's your kind of
Good question. I think it's it's dependent. I know artists that have basically just focused into just doing illustration, like we were talking about.
yeah,
I'm a weird hybrid. I do what Pete was just talking about with the concept art and things like that. That's a complete separate half of what I do. And in fact, I tend to do more of that than I do the illustration, and that's why it's a side kind of extra thing for me. That's not the main moneymaker, if you will, because usually I'll have either a full time job or a contract that's paid hourly or per project that is occupying the majority of my time,
right,
and it's a different focus. So there's a lot of artists that do like that, and then there are quite a few that just take illustration work. So for those ones where MTG isn't the main moneymaker, they're doing other illustrations, book illustrations, illustrations for tabletop games, illustrations for. I mean, Wizards of the Coast alone has dozens
yeah,
of different products that they
right,
need art for, and they're constantly hiring out artists for that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think you can find, I think you will find that the vast majority of artists that are using MTG, or rather doing work for MTG that's on the side, are producing art for their main gig too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
kind of a long roundabout way to say the same thing.
I see. I've done only a one small thing for Magic the Gathering many, many years ago. This is like
I
2006 or
remember this.
seven. Yeah, I was like just sketch illustrations for the book, the role playing books and stuff. It was like creature design kind of stuff, but it wasn't illustration painting. Another question here
Yeah.
from Natalia is: you have to deal with revisions. Is that into like the part of your guess, negotiation for pay, or is that stuff that's extra?
Great question. There are definitely revisions. Almost every painting I've ever done for Wizards has had some kind of minor revisions at the end. That said, like I mentioned earlier, their contract system and their um, how they work with their stable of artists is so refined
Yeah.
that all of this is already kind of planned out and accounted for in terms of time and money.
Mm.
So I have had minor edits where they'll be like, "Hey, Izzy, this the painting you did of this goblin, the anatomy of their face isn't quite matching the goblins for this plane. Can you go back and edit the skull structure a little bit?
Right.
Get that to match."
Right.
And yeah, no problem. I go and do that. It's a couple of hours. Usually it's even less because what we're talking about with a finished painting at this point is, like warp tool or something like that. You
Yeah.
just got to select the thing and transform it a little bit and you're golden. And then I've had it all the way up to Izzy, we're sorry. This isn't working at all. We need to completely rework the composition of this painting.
Yeah.
And usually with those, they have a budget for those kinds of edits. If like they have led you down an alley that's not quite working for this painting,
Mm-hmm.
and they recognize that, they're gonna make sure to compensate you for the time in order to fix that.
Have you-
Usually a quarter up to a half
Yeah.
of the original commission.
Have you ever been taken off of an illustration or taken away from you?
Yes, that does happen. It's extremely rare.
Okay.
I don't. So how 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 this usually happens is I get. I can't say for sure because I'm not on the inside over there, but I have gotten at quite a bit of illustrations from them that were like,
Yeah.
"Izzy, we have 2 weeks to finish this. The other artist was they completely misfired. Please, can you take this on?
Yeah.
Here's rush bonus, etc." That's happened a lot. Even in one case, I did a comic for them. I don't know if you remember that. I did a
No.
fully painted. I think it was like 7 or 8 pages comic, which was really fun. It I think I that's when I first started getting white hairs. Was that project? It was intense, but it was a delayed job because the artist disappeared.
Yeah.
They just stopped responding.
Oh man.
But that I get that more than anything else. In the
Mhm.
cases where I got taken off, I would say, from my understanding, it's never been because the art was super wrong, but it was because that particular card was canceled,
Mm.
or um, it didn't. They needed like there was a specific reason. It wasn't my artwork that failed it. It was, as I understand it,
Yeah.
could be somebody's just very PC over there, but it's generally been because there was a mechanical issue rather than an artistic one.
Oh,
But that
interesting.
said, one of the things that they do a lot, and I think this is common with any kind of bigger illustration, firm where they're just drawing in tons of illustrations, is if something's not working, they'll just pay you to finish it and they'll plug it in somewhere else. And
Oh.
that
Huh.
has happened to me, where I finished a painting and then I look at the set and it's not there.
Yeah.
And then 5, 6 years down the line, it's being used as an insert piece for a Dungeons and Dragons book or
I
something
see.
like that.
Yeah.
That totally happens.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lot to manage. If you think about the logistics, like that team goes through, like the managerial team and all the art directors, it's kind of incredible how much they churn out every year.
Mm.
If you really look at how many artists they're managing at one time, all of the different products and the waves that they're delivering for those products, it is intense.
Yeah.
I guess that's actually a pretty important thing to note, and it's something I do talk about with my students is that when you're part of a team and you're creating some aspect of work for that team, to remember that the cogs and the wheels are moving well outside of your view, and that having a little bit of patience and respect for those people operating where they're at, and just giving them a little bit of wiggle room in terms of how you're receiving a situation. Like if you're not getting notes back right away, or if they're being difficult, understanding, or at least just having it in your head that there's so much going on
Yeah.
the top end that you don't ever see.
Yeah.
It's a pond, and you're only seeing the surface. Right?
Mm. Question from Jorge here is I've seen some Magic the Gathering artists using their art to have side income from prints and auctions. Is that a regular contract thing in the agreement that they're allowed to do that? Uh, get with permission from posts. I think he's asking about like using, let's say, that
Right.
artwork for side prints and stuff you would sell at shows and whatnot. Is that something that you have to ask for permission? Is it something that you could just allow to do?
So Wizards of the Coast has a really nice licenses, commons and licenses, whatever it is, program where if you're an artist, you are able to sell prints of your work that you've done for them. You're able to sell, copies of it if you were to do another painting of the same painting. Like if you're a traditional artist and you do like a sketch version of the same character or something like that, they tend to not really bother with any of that.
Really?
Where they have specific like no-nos is on things that could be classified as products.
Oh,
So, for example, one of the main ones is play mats. You know, those mouse pad cloth kind of rubber things that you
yeah,
can play the cards on. Which,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you would use for your mouse.
yeah.
So those play mats, you're not supposed to sell any of their licensed work that they've
Right,
licensed from you on
right.
a playmat because they sell playmats. That's a product,
I
you
see,
see.
I see.
But they have some really cool rules that I think are very forgiving for artists. For example, if I was to release a book of paintings,
Yeah.
I am allowed to include, so long as I let them know, up to I think it is 75% of that artwork can be Wizards of the Coast artwork,
Wow.
which is incredible. Like you gotta give them credit. Like
And you don't
there's
pay
some
for any
good
license or
artists
cut for
out
that?
there.
Holy
Um,
crap! Wow.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty good. That's how it was the last time I kind of poked that bar
Mm.
in terms of trying to figure out, what I could do. I don't know if that's still the case, but the last time I ventured in that route, that was the return I got on it, which is kind of amazing. You know,
Mm. Cool,
pretty
man.
cool. Because
Yeah.
I mean, you worked in games and film and animation. Like once you give something over, once you sign that contract, it's all theirs. Period.
Oh yeah.
Forever and all time.
Well,
And how it is.
yeah. Even right now, I'm dealing with things that I worked on from like 5, 6 years ago. One of them was for a feature animation project that I worked on with the producer and director, and it was based on contract, but it was like contracting to do a pitch project essentially. That project got
Mhm.
shelved essentially. I don't even know exactly where that is, but I reached out to just a couple of days ago, honestly, for a project I worked on in 2017. And he was like, "Well, let me contact the producers on that show right now." And he reached out to them saying, "Oh, I'm not getting a response." Actually, he's getting even a that the email that gets sent back to him saying it's not an actual valid email anymore. So at this point, he's like, "Just
Yeah.
just post it." Even like games that I worked on a couple of years ago that I did,
Yeah.
I asked him, "Hey, can I show this?" And they even forgot that they had worked on this stuff. Well, we don't even know who
Hmm.
owns it anymore because one company bought that
Yeah.
company, and that project now is floating in the air. But there was
Right.
another one that I worked on for Imagineering with Tracy, and I asked her, "Hey, can I post this stuff?" And he's like, "No, Disney's much more adamant about don't post it, even if it's not being
Yeah.
used or not." So it's definitely one of those situations where you have to ask, no matter.
Yeah. And it's always going to be case by case.
Yeah,
It's you have to measure the risk you're willing to take with
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
right,
Sharing work from unfinished projects. I have quite a few of those that'll never see the light of day,
yeah,
and that's with some of them. I worked with the team at AGBO. That's the brothers that did Endgame,
oh,
Russo brothers,
okay, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Their company. I did an it was also Greenlight. They did a bunch of illustrations for a Greenlight pitch for a really well known IP that they were going to do an animation for. And I love those paintings, but
mm,
I can't ever show them.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I don't know, because I'm so low on the the wheel of power there.
yeah.
I'll unless that show comes out, that's the only time I'll know if I can show that stuff.
I see.
It is tough. You kind of have to relegate yourself to accepting that a lot of your work is never going to be seen when you work in previs. That's just it's kind of the name of the game, right?
Yeah, yeah. Alexander's asking this, like, we talked about how jobs can be potentially be taken from you, but have you ever bailed on a project or where, like, maybe the person you're working with, the client is not really good to work with, not really interact with at all? Do you ever do that? Like, you stepped away from the piece of illustration, specifically even from magic or something else? Did you
Good
kind of stick with
question.
and problem solve it?
I've never walked away from a WotC project. I can say that for sure. I have so it's interesting. I have a one of my mentees is going through this currently where they've got a client that is asking for too many changes really
Uh,
regularly, and
yeah,
it's not pretty. Everything I've been hearing about it, it sounds really really unpleasant.
but they're paying for
Might
that
be
time
their
though.
first. They're not paying for changes.
Oh, yeah,
They're paying for the flat fee for the illustration.
that's a no-no right
But
there. Yeah,
wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be cool if? At
yeah,
every stage of
no,
development, so that there is, it's the target's always moving.
yeah,
Very dangerous.
no. I
And
don't.
I've
I
already
don't deal
told
with
them
that.
you should walk away from this and just eat it. Just
Yeah,
walk away.
yeah,
So that being said, I have worked on projects, and I think every artist does. I have worked on projects where I got screwed.
yeah,
We've all been there. What comes with experience is learning to recognize potential problem clients before you join
yeah,
out.
for sure.
And a lot of that comes down to asking the right questions in the beginning.
Yeah,
You got to be forthright. And when you're freelancing, gang, no matter who you're working for, film, video games, um, tabletop stuff, magic, whatever, the only person that's going to be out there defending you and protecting your interests and your needs is you.
yeah,
Like that's it. So as you develop, and I know this. I'm naturally kind of a shy guy, so I had to learn how to kind of project that and that confidence that says, hey, here's my boundaries. Here's what I need from this project. Can you deliver this?
yeah.
And communicate that clearly to that client. And if that client gets squirrely at all in the beginning, you got to bounce.
Yeah.
That you learn really quick, like
Lost your audio.
for illustration.
Uh,
Sorry,
I just
my
lost your
audio is
audio.
bad.
No, no, there was a bit of a skip. I think I just lost the connection just for a second. I'm good. We're good. We're back up. So sorry, there was a little bit
Okay.
hiccup right there.
I did realize I actually have my VPN right now on,
Oh,
and that might be what's causing this. But if
okay.
I turn it off, we'll have to disconnect. So if it is problematic,
Yeah, yeah,
having issues, let me know, and we'll just have to drop. I'll drop off the feed for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
off the VPN.
Yeah, if it happens
Awesome.
consistently, I'll let you know.
Okay. So what was I talking about? The
It
I
was,
just had I was just contacted
yeah,
about joining a stable of artists that would be doing effectively what I'm doing now, freelance for myself,
right.
but under a bigger company. And when I wrote back to them, I was like, "This is a really interesting opportunity. Can you tell me so for your artists, what kind of timeline do you expect for back and forth, returns, notes, that sort of thing? And what's the rate that I can expect for working with your team?"
Right.
And then when they came back to me, they were kind of a little like, well, we haven't really worked out the rates yet because we're still assembling the team, and that's going to be all decided based on the project, and same thing with the timeline and stuff like that, which are reasonable things. I'm not saying they're unreasonable,
Yeah,
but comes to protecting myself,
sure.
as a freelance artist, these are unknowns that I can't afford to get involved with.
Yeah,
So I'd rather work amongst relationships that I've already established that are more secure, that have all of these variables already lined up and clear.
yeah.
Clarity is so important, right? Has this
Mm.
been the case for you?
It is, but I think when you're younger, you're just afraid to ask. But you're trying to do a service. You want them to like you. You want to be able to get the job. So you kind of make certain sacrifices, or you won't speak up because you don't want to make a bad impression or make a bad network. So if anything else, you'll be the one to accept that lower end if you have to. I think as you get older and mature and more used to the system of dialogue, not that you don't care, as you said, you're more vocal about it and you're willing to be. Yeah, I mean, even now, I'm much more upfront about, well, more specific about things, and it's got to be on paper as well. It just
Yeah.
can't be kept the dialogue. I want to see full contract proof, consistent to the. If anything ever goes awry, it's not to say I'm pointing fingers, but here in the contract it says this. We just do. It just
Have
makes
you,
life easier.
have you ever bailed on a project? Like, did it get real murky while you were in it?
Not
Like,
necessarily. No,
sorry,
no.
better with that.
Yeah, no. I didn't really ever bail on a project. it can be difficult working with certain clients. It can be quite demanding, but it's never gotten to a point where it was so strenuous that I couldn't make those changes. It's the kind of the normal experience that I think most artists have in terms of what you can go back in and handle and change things, but never to the point where I felt like I had to bail on it. Trying to think of at any moment there was something like this. I think as an independent contractor, not so much. Working in the full time industry, there have been moments where it's not the individual artist's fault, but the whole group, the culture of the studio, not really doing a very good job being led by a certain number of leads,
Mm.
and it kind of gets taken away from the parent. Parent company takes it from us, essentially. That's kind of stuff I've experienced. It's not because the individual artist not doing enough. It's just culture of the studio not really pushing. So, for me though, as an independent artist, not really. I have another question. Who knows was
Yeah,
asking about how did you actually even get started in Wizard of the Coast and Magic Cards? Did you just apply for it, or did they just contact you? And did you have a friend, the
I
word of
see.
mouth, or how that happened?
Right. So those folks that are watching that have been in my streams and classes before have heard this story. But
Hmm.
essentially, when I started at Wizards of the Coast, I was working. So you'll remember this full well. I left Art Center with just a profound amount of student debt,
Yeah,
right? Because all I had was loans. I couldn't get grants. I couldn't get scholarships, or I did get a scholarship, but I had to pay for everything,
yeah.
gas, food, rent from my loans. So I had a massive loan.
Can you share a
And
ballpark number of what that is?
oh, I'll give it to you straight up. I believe the total and was somewhere between 130 and 150K. It was ridiculous, and it was predatory as shit. I mean, I will straight up talk about this right
Yeah.
now. Let us spill some tea. So what happened was, they have these loan officers or loan agents
Yeah.
that work in every college, and they're the ones that you go to and you say,
Right.
"Hey, I'm short of cash. I
Yeah.
need cash," and they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, sure. Here's I can get you this much." From this place, and this place, and some of it'll be government, and some of it'll be private,
Yeah.
and you just sign here, no big deal.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm an idiot. I signed everything. It was like I need money. I have nothing. I walked.
Yeah.
I went down to California with you. I had. I think I'd saved $10,000,
Yeah.
and I thought I'm gonna be okay. Gone in like 2 weeks. Like
Yeah.
gone. Art supplies, all of the different things, rent, all the things that we did, and we were roommates
Yeah.
through the entirety of college.
Yeah.
So you know full well how this was. I left with this massive debt, and I was so scared of being crushed by that debt that I just hustled so hard
Yeah.
in those first 5, 10 years. So I was working my main gig, which at that time I believe was Neversoft. So I was on one of the Tony Hawk games at the time, and I was trying to get in. I was trying to get any freelance I could. So I was doing designs for miniatures
Mm.
for tabletop games. I don't know if you remember those. I was
Yeah.
doing designs for any little project that I could get. And this is also where I got into a lot of those situations where mistakes happen, where like
Mm.
I delivered an artwork and then they took it and then I didn't get paid,
Yeah.
or they paid me with miniatures and they're
Exactly.
like, "Hey, here's the value of the miniatures, so that should cover the payment." And I'm like, "I need money. I have loans to pay," like
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Anyway, so we'll bypass that shit. Uh, After a while, I learned about Wizards of the Coast, and places. I played Magic when I was in school. I think
Right.
you played a little too, didn't you?
I barely touched it. I
That
think I
was
did a
never
little
your
bit of role
jam.
playing
Yeah,
stuff with you, but never really Magic cards. Card games never really
yeah.
caught my interest.
Right. I played them in high school, so I
Yeah.
was aware of them. I only ever really liked the artwork. I wasn't great at it,
Yeah.
but I liked them. They were too expensive to stick with. That's a whole other story for another time. But I did remember that stuff. So I actually, to answer the question, to come back around full circle, I applied through the jobs portal on
Mm.
wizardsofthecoast.com. They got
Yeah.
a jobs portal. They say apply. Here's your artwork. We want a resume. What do you got? I applied. I got an email back from them about 30 minminutes later that said,
Really?
"Thank you very much for applying,
Mm.
but your work isn't what we're looking for
Yeah.
right now," etc. So I was like, "Oh, tears." had Izzy because I was like I really needed the work. It's
Yeah.
like I was supposed to be a good feather in my cap, get other kinds of work.
What year was this?
So 2007,
Seven.
early
Okay.
2007, I think. I want to say like probably February or March. And then about a day later, maybe a little bit sooner, I got an email from them saying, "Hey, actually, we could really use you for this other project.
Yeah.
We can't use you for Magic right now, but we have these other things." So I got started doing a cover for a compendium book that was for Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm.
That was my first gig with them. It paid pretty well. I mean, like helped with the loans. I remember that. And then
Yeah.
I ended up starting to get more and more and more. And then after, I'd say I worked on 2 or 3 different IPs with Wizards of the Coast with different art directors. That's the thing to remember is Wizards of the Coast, not only do they have a stable of thousands of artists, the people managing them, that's a stable of art directors
Yeah.
in-house and remote that that handle all those different artists. So
Right.
what you want to do is perform well for individual art directors and your name's going to get passed around. They're going to share you
Exactly.
in this project.
Right. Right.
That's how it worked for me. I think you can absolutely still get a job through the jobs portal. There is no there really is no backdoor to get in where you can just be like uh, approaching somebody or sending the right email that's going to for sure lock you a job.
Mm.
It may be, and this has been my experience with other jobs, where you know somebody behind the scenes and they tell you, awesome, I will let them know that you're applying, but you
Yeah.
have to go through the jobs portal anyway.
Right.
Has
Exactly.
that been the case for you?
Yeah, it has. But the one that I worked on for Wizards of the Coast back then, they reached out to me. They found my work online. It was like a blog spot post I put up. I didn't have a website back then. There was no Instagram. There were no other
Right.
art stations. It was just a blog spot stuff of artwork on there. They had probably seen that, and then just kind of shared
Right.
their work around. Yeah, so I figured that would be the case. You still go through kind of cold into the website and apply for the work. Going back to the beginning of Art Center, how we started. I think I took out about maybe 30 to 45. Uh, would you
That
do
sounds
it?
familiar.
Would you do it again now? Like if you were going to Art Center again, or would you even go to Art Center again? The pricing that they're currently asking, because back when we started, Art Center was around at the high end of 9K a term on that.
It, it was like the second or third term we went. You'll remember when we started, it was actually like 7K, and there were protests for it going up to 9K.
Yeah.
So what is it now?
So right now, a single term, I just looked it up because I had a class today. It was like 24,431 or something like that. 24K per term. Do you remember how many classes a full-time student has to take? Is it 4 or 5? 4 or 5 classes.
It was a number of credits.
Number of credits.
The number of credits would ultimately come out to be, I think, 4 or 5.
Because each class was 3 credits.
Yeah, you would get classes that were like 9-hour classes that would be more credits.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah.
And didn't we do some pretty hyper, like 5 or 6
Oh,
classes?
no, for sure. I've done 5 classes a term.
I feel like we did more.
I've done it once or twice of 6 classes a term. That was with academic classes, not with full elective classes. But yeah, I was trying to remember I was trying to tell students how many classes a full-time student had to take, and I thought it was around average-wise about 4 to 5, depending on how many credits you had to get full-time. So that's now 20 plus 24K a term. Do you think that's something that you would actually even be able to consider now? Would you?
That's a really tough question. If all things were the same as they were before, and I had to take out 150K, yeah, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. That said, with the prices you're talking about now and the debt that I would have to get into for that, you're definitely talking about more than 150K to get through 3 years of that. So, no, I don't know that I can say I would do it again with the conditions changed to what they are now. That's insane.
Conditions in terms of like the industry or more educational?
Well, it's an interesting situation because when you're going to a school like Art Center, Rhode Island, what is it, Barnum?
Yeah,
in Florida.
Ringling.
Ringling, thank you. I knew it was a circus thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, So like when you're going to a school like that, you're not just paying for the education you get, you're also
Exactly.
paying for the contacts you make
Hmm.
when you're there. I've heard you talk about this before. It's like
Yeah.
one of the most valuable things I got out of school was the proving myself to my peers proving themselves to me, and then us all coming up and out into this world together.
Mm.
It was like, like a spawn of tadpoles all growing up at the same rate together and being able to kind of look out for each other. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that you're really paying for. You're getting, yes, education, of course, but that is one of the great values that you're going to get from a traditional education that I don't think you can get from being an autodidact.
Of course.
But is it worth 20K every 3 months? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So I was having discussion because at the end of my classes, today was my last day for Tuesday. I normally bring up the educational conversation about, if I was a student today, I was in your shoes. I'm like, what would I actually need? So I asked that question to you and also to others. I try to get a sense about what my peers and friends would actually even consider in thought process because I don't talk enough with people about stuff like this. I think I have a general idea as to how people respond. I like hearing more of like how you would actually reply to that. It seems difficult as a
Mm-hmm.
choice to even go that route. Myself personally, it's like even at that price, I would probably spend as much as I'm comfortable with. I think the difference is I think when we were younger, that was the only option we had. There were no other things. So we had to finish there to complete the portfolio to start looking for work. Today, that's not really the case. I mean, we have many options of education and stuff. I wouldn't even really go full the 3 years. I'd probably just here, on for just that amount, leave, don't worry about graduating, and then go somewhere else from there. Saving
Mm-hmm.
that money and still spend enough to attain the things you're talking about, the networking, the fun. So Lucy BB was asking about what's the reason behind the price increase. I think a lot of it is just first the economy. It's also logistics of what they're paying for, the space they own, the properties in the building up that they're doing at different parts of Pasadena. So where all the money is going, the price of paying for instructors is going up as well. Any other logistics that they have to pay for is what the price is kind of being dropped into. But this was a discussion of topic for all generations of art center people. Where is that money even really going? But that's they
Mm-hmm.
don't disclose those numbers in public. It's feelings.
I think, well, this is where we would get into politics a little. But I
Yeah,
definitely think that there is an element of, charging what you can get away with, and the fact that we live in a society, here in the United States where getting that college education is at not only premium but required,
yeah,
like to get any decent job.
yeah.
And the more specialized your focus is, the
True.
more likely it will be that you need to go to a specialized, extra expensive school. So it's I don't think it's reasonable to charge these kinds of prices. Like I
Yeah.
certainly understand overhead, I understand all of that stuff, but
Right.
that like it's I would argue that it is predatory
Yeah. Yeah.
and dangerously.
I
But
mean, I would agree with that. It's also they would use this kind of like reasoning, which I don't know if it holds true as much these days. But they can also claim things like you're part of Art Center and have that network,
mhm,
and you can go out there and say that name, and all of a sudden people day it's like face. So
no,
it's a hard reason
I
to
don't care.
yeah, it's hard to kind of make that decision to go there. But I still recommend people to not even Art Center. I'm talking more about universities and colleges in general to just at least have experience of a minor degree of it, time investment, and then leave, finish your education somewhere else. Quality of education is going to be pretty much level throughout any experience you go as an independent or even full time. It's just more about the things of the specific nature of communication, networking, facilities, and stuff like that we're talking. I think again you don't need 4 years of that. It's
Yeah,
tough
I
one.
definitely don't want to come off anti-establishmentarianist
No, I
on
don't.
that.
I don't read
Really,
it that
it's
way.
I would always recommend going to school because of one major factor that autodidacts will always struggle with. When you're learning something, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
And having a guide, having a mentor, having teachers, having other peers that are going through that same struggle that you are, aid you and let you know what you need to know at what time in order to build the foundation of that education
Yeah.
is paramount. And I
Yeah.
don't think that you can get a quality education without something like that.
Yeah.
And it's tougher as an autodidact to develop that um, the that foundation to get that schematic working, learning what you need to know before you could possibly know what you
Yeah.
need to know, right?
Exactly.
Like it's a catch 22.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to say I would prefer a schooling situation myself, and
Yeah.
that's what I would generally recommend. But
Yeah.
holy shit, 20 plus grand
Yeah.
per 3 months
It's
is
tough. Tough.
nuts.
Yeah, I think one thing that I presented real simply like this is a simple, just numbers game. If you look at a full time student that goes to art center like we did, and we spent, let's say, average of 3 to 4 years there, and the amount of classes that we took, which potentially between 4 to 5 classes a term. If you're an independent, self educating student, I recommend normally in a single session of a term 2 classes at the most. But some of those students are working part time, full time, they got family, whatever the case, other business. So if you just look at the numbers of it, if you're talking about a 4 year program, someone who's doing self education is going to get half of the education 4 year period. No way you're going to be able to. Another part of this is that, well, some people would say, why can't I take then 3 or 4 classes online? It's like, well, you think you would actually work 40 hours a week on homework of 4 classes as a full time student would in person? I don't think I would even be able to do that, mainly because when we were together, we were in an environment that was like heavy pressured competition, pushing ourselves. Doing it by myself in
Yeah,
a room, I don't think it would be possible.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what was our average then? Like, I remember my average sleeping per night was like 4 hours or
Yeah.
something like that.
I don't know how, but you got
It
way
was
more
like,
sleep than we did.
yeah. Well, I also would like start working. Actually, yeah, I remember that. I only got like 4 hours a night, but that was more than most people.
You know, earlier you said you procrastinate, but I don't remember you really procrastinating during art center, honestly. Yeah, you had moments of
So,
like playing games.
but that's one of those things. Like we were talking about learning yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I am the natural procrastinator, except competition.
Ah,
So when it like that's one of those things as a veteran artist and like an old guy now that I think about a lot. I was even thinking about it earlier today. Was like I should be taking a class because I know that if I was taking a class, I would be pushing myself sitting here, right? Like
yeah,
I know how I work. There's that competitive aspect to me
sure.
that is just kind of comical. It's a ridiculous concept, but yeah,
I mean, it worked because
I
during
remember that.
school, I remember like you would be going to bed, and I'm like, I'm still up working. I don't remember you pulling that many all nighters, get minimal sleep.
Yeah.
I've the longest I stayed up, and I was mentioning this to students today at art center was 3 days straight. Oh, that's how many days I pulled one. That
Huh.
brutal. But I don't remember you staying up more than one night
I did.
at times. I don't know how you did that.
I think, I think the only all nighters I pulled was to help somebody else.
Exactly.
I remember that. Here, it's funny. I forgot all this stuff. Yeah, I think that you're right. That
Well, I also wanted to ask you about Art Center. My memory is still fuzzy at times about this. I don't know how good your long term memory is, but what was a class that we took? We didn't take it together. I took it before you guys, but it was a class where we were teamed up in a group of 4 or 5s, and you guys did these big projects on the wall display, and
yeah,
you guys did that
yeah,
something else. But what was that class about? Do you remember what the format was? Like who the
that was.
instructor was?
It was. I'm trying to remember the name of the class. It was
And I want to say this was like
not
sixth
visual
term,
development.
6th or 7th term.
Yeah, it was like later. It was our graduation project
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
for our. We well, no, I'm sorry, no, I'm mixing it up.
You had two.
We based our graduation project on that same
Yeah,
concept. We
yeah.
we didn't sorry, not concept, same format.
Right,
Sorry.
exactly.
We built a whole project with a group with an IP and a story and
Yes.
tons of art and stuff like that. But we did that officially in the class with a completely different IP that we developed.
Right.
That was
Was
that
it just
was
IP
entertainment
development? Entertainment IP development, something like that?
something. I think it was entertainment development, and it was a required course,
It was. And there was
right?
the instructor
And
was
we
like
took
some
it
kind of
with
art
I don't
director.
remember the guy's name. Was it Bob?
I can't remember.
He was one of the lead. I do remember that he came. Oh man, we got stories. He came in with a woman at the beginning of my class with him, and he was talking about he was known for developing the Bratz dolls.
Oh, really? I don't
So if
remember
you
that at
look
all.
up the original developer of the Bratz dolls, I think that's
I
going
don't
to be
remember
the
this.
guy, and he's the son of one of the other designers that was at the school.
Mm.
He was like in his, I mean, he's younger. He was younger than we are now. He was like early 30s, I think, something like
Really?
that. But he was like super, yeah, he was a super Hollywood guy, and like he knew his stuff. He was very like savvy, you know.
And the guy I
But
remember
the
was a bit
idea of the
older.
class, I think it was different people taught the same
Possibly,
class
yeah.
too. I
What?
think it was entertainment design or entertainment development, and the whole concept of the class was to build out an a transmedia IP
Yeah.
and to plan out that IP. So you're going to create a story, you're going to create all this stuff, but it needed to work as a movie, an animation. It needed to work on lunch boxes,
Yeah.
have a yo-yo. Like you had to think about every possible tier of merchandising that you could do
An
with this
outlet.
IP.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
the goal of this class was to do was kind of what we do now, what I do now, especially is like, you know, developing an IP with the idea of selling it on multiple fronts and therefore increasing the value of that idea.
Yeah.
Because if you come up with a kick-ass story, if you're a screenwriter or something like that, you come up with a cool story, that's a self-contained singular merchandising opportunity.
Exactly.
But what everybody's looking for now, and this is exemplified very specifically with Marvel, what everybody's looking for now is a multimedia or transmedia franchise that can be used in lots of different places.
Right.
Better still, a franchise that is self-contained and expansive, aka cinematic universe,
Right.
Where then you can take that cinematic universe and do theme parks and rides and toys. Like it's a whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's what that class was. If I remember correctly.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
it
trying
was
to.
fun.
I remembered it mainly because it was such a important kind of experience that I didn't really have before Art Center, and then even after Art Center. It would work, but then when I started teaching, I was realizing a lot of students, even at Art Center, weren't getting that anymore. That class
Really?
didn't exist in the illustration department, from my understanding. They were like project
Ah.
building classes, portfolio building, advanced entertainment design kind of stuff. It wasn't like team built IP. So I
Mm-hmm.
wondered why it's like that part kind of got taken out of the curriculum at Art Center. But also when you go online, that doesn't exist at all. It's all about the independent
Really?
skill set. Well, I mean, if you look on other schools like Brainstorm or CDA or CG, all these online schools, it's all about your personal growth of technique and skill set. But when does that actually move
Not
into then
teamwork.
things like team building? Because what we industry is
Yeah.
nothing but teamwork. I think
Yeah.
that's a big disadvantage right now with what student education that they don't get. We had. Um,
Agreed. Yeah.
so
Well, I
yeah,
think part of that was at that time, I don't know if you remember, there really wasn't an entertainment
no,
track
no,
the way we see it now. We kind of built it, didn't we? Like we were the ones that were like, I remember going into the student counselor's office where you could kind of plan out your curriculum
yeah,
and being like, this doesn't work for me.
yeah,
You know, you, me, Aaron, Kevin, lots of people essentially kind of revolted against the traditional
illustration,
illustration path.
right,
Instead, we want to do illustration plus,
right.
which is going to be more of an entertainment lean because they didn't have a track for that.
I
So I don't
think
know.
weird because I think when we came in, because we came in 2001. Just remind me, when we started, was it September? Was it fall of
Yes.
2001? Our first day
Yeah.
was September 11th, wasn't it?
Our first week was September 11th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was telling that
School got
story also.
canceled
Exactly.
for a week.
So that's what I
I
remember.
saw that. It made me laugh. I was watching you. Was it last week?
Yeah.
When you were talking about that, because
Yeah,
it reminded me we were living in that weird
The halfway home.
LA motel,
Yeah.
haunted house. Like if you've ever seen American Horror Story, the first season, the murder house, that's where we were living. We were living in the murder house. Absolutely, the backstory for that murder house was exactly the same as the backstory for the place that we were living in Pasadena.
Oh my gosh.
Super creepy. Check it out. Oh yeah, there's stories, gang. There's stories.
That
But anyway,
structure.
that was our first week
Yeah.
of school. They canceled our first week of school.
Yeah.
Because they were convinced that they were going to fly planes into Art
everywhere.
Center.
Exactly. was weird because I was telling that story, and you think about like there was no way for us to know. Like, we had no phones that would give us that information, and we had to go home and like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And we watched the TV on the news, and we see
Yeah.
what's going on. But yeah, that was our first week at
Yeah.
Art Center. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had the
It
memory,
was
but I
like
didn't remember.
it was like the Kennedy assassination,
Yeah,
right? Like I remember you were at school, right?
yeah. I went to
When it happened.
class. I went to class
Yeah.
in the morning.
I didn't have early classes that day,
Oh,
so I'd gotten up. I was having coffee and breakfast with a whole bunch of students staying in this big kind of murder house that had a whole bunch of rooms, and each
okay.
room in this big LA mansion. It was kind of like a really crappy LA mansion, but
That's the
every
place
room was
we
being
lived at.
rented
Yeah,
out by a different student.
right.
And there was a group of us just sitting around, and I remember there was like a TV in the little dining area,
Yeah.
and I mean like CRT TV was sitting there, and it was up on the news. I was sipping coffee or having toast or whatever, and I didn't. We were all like, "What? This is crazy." I remember specifically my first thought thinking it was like CG or something. I thought it was fake. Yeah, and you came home and we're all like, we're freaking out. It was like, crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was like our first. You know what's funny is we've had multiple, JFK assassination level events in our lifetime
it's true.
now.
There has been even up to the point
Yeah.
of this a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Total
crazy.
aside, that's crazy. 2001, long time ago.
I know. But anyways, yeah, art center, education, that kind Alex wanted to ask about your travels on the boat, open waters. Has it influenced or inspired your art? I'm assuming it had. It can't have affected you traumatically, but also in inspiration in terms of your travels of being in the ocean by yourself with your dog. I still remember, very vividly this, you're telling me that you had bought in the boat. You told me, I think, during Art Center. No, I'm sorry, not Art Center, Comic Con. That we
Yeah.
were at the show together. You told me that you were doing. I'm not sure if I'm going to go or not, and I said, yeah, we'll do it. But he's asking about that experience as an overall. But I'm sure it must have done something to perceptions of how to create.
Yeah. Oh, many fold. I mean, it going choosing to live a life that is not typical. You're going to see, experience, and meet people, and just have all sorts of different kinds of adventures. We'll call them that for lack of a better term. But you're gonna experience all sorts of things that affect your life for sure.
Mm.
And I don't know if going on that, going out and doing that for that number of years, affecting my art was my plan. But I do remember that conversation. You said that I should do it because it's going to change how I think about things. Like I remember you saying that it was going to be a really good thing for me.
Well, yeah,
And
you were such in a spot with the way the industry was treating you and how you were kind of
yeah,
engaged in that. That it was only going to protect you deeper in that sense. How it was for you.
so it gave me. I mean, to answer your question, Alex, it changed. It influenced and inspired everything, not just my art. It did. I would say the least affected thing is probably my art, but not to say that it wasn't affected. What it really did, there were a few factors that really changed in my perception about life, like as a human being, life as an artist and a creator, and then also the relationships that you have in your life. Like it was a profound experience. So, for example, I would say essentially leaving the rat race of Hollywood, and I was trying so hard to like get in. I wanted to scripts out. I wanted to get my fresh IPs out. I wanted to sell. I wanted to like make my own Star Wars. Going out there and doing that made me realize that it it made it was a proof of a theory that I'd had about life in general, which was like, this is it. You have one resource that you're never going to be able to rebuild. You can rebuild money, rebuild power, rebuild all sorts of the resources that you spend in your life, but the only one you can't is time.
Yeah.
And the very first lesson I got when I went out there on that boat was I'd gotten my boat, I'd moved to Mexico, was by myself, nothing had gone to plan. So it was already a disaster.
Yeah.
And I'm living on the boat in the summer in Mazatlan, the hottest thing I'd ever experienced. I was going to die. Definitely thought the dog was going to die. Um, while I was out there, I had met an older guy. He was, I want to say, mid 70s, something like that.
Mm.
And he was so excited because he had just bought a boat, and this was his dream. He'd been planning, dreaming. This was going to be his thing. And like not long after moving onto the boat, he hadn't even gone out to sail yet. This guy passed away,
Oh wow.
and it was like, there it is.
Yeah.
If you have something that you want to do or something that you feel compelled to do, there is no such thing as waiting for the right time, because you have no control over when you have no control when that time, when that resource is done. So by me going out, and a lot of these folks, I made during that time, I made so many friends with people that were 20 plus years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And this was another huge, I was talking about relationships earlier, like how this shifted my perspective on things.
Yeah.
You should absolutely endeavor to have friends of different age groups. You should try your hardest to make friends with people that are much older than you, much younger than you. And what that's going to do is it's going to inform your perspective on the world, politics, stories, and relationships. And having these older friends like really opened my eyes to time and the reality of how much time we have, because
Right.
they're in the autumn years. They're like, they're finally doing the thing that they always wanted to do. They're retired, that sort of stuff. And they were like, Izzy, you have no idea how good you have it. You realized that they were giving me credit I didn't deserve. They were like, you realized that it's all a sham. These are your best years. You're out here living, doing this thing with your best years, and no, very few people can say that, like,
Yeah.
because they've been fed this line, gotta work, 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 and you know, then you get to have your cake,
Right.
right?
Right.
After you've worked in the mines, then you have your cake.
Yeah.
And they said you book the pattern, you knew, and I was like, oh, I didn't know. I was just running away from. I was doing my own. What I realized was they were right, and in a sense, I was retiring before retiring. I was
Yeah.
retiring before I was old enough to retire. And what it changed was my understanding of like how money, how advertising, how everything that we desire is driven by this outside force that's almost like this ever present mystical thing that's just constantly telling you the things that you need to have, that
Yeah.
you need to want.
Yeah.
And none of it's true. None of it's true. If you can distill for yourself down and allow yourself to be in a position where you can retire for yourself before you need to retire, you're going to experience something that you hadn't experienced since you were a kid. And I called it the summer vacation syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, Peter, but being a little kid, you have summer vacation, you're off from school, and you lose all sense of time, lose all sense of necessity, like in terms of the responsibilities. There's this almost perfect quietude, this sacred tranquility that just happens because there is nothing you need to do but be. And you can do that at any time.
Yeah.
They don't tell you this. They
Yeah.
say, oh, you've got to work, 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 and then you can do this. Huh. That's a trick.
Yeah.
Right? That was number one. The biggest thing I learned out there was that you can just be, experience, be present, absorb, learn, read what you want to read, when you want to read, draw when you want to draw, play when you want to play. And you don't need anybody to give you permission. You
Exactly.
don't need a time card for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like such a valuable lesson for me. And I also learned the inverse of that. I learned that there is a certain point that I think everybody would attain where you're being a vagabond, you're a ski hobo like I was, where you're like, no, I miss working with people. I miss that interaction. I miss like productivity. Right? That's kind of something like I hunger for.
Yeah.
When I came back to it, what I brought back with me, my Promethean discovery, my fire I stole from the gods was, I'm back and I'm working for other people. But none of this matters
Yeah.
because what's really key is that presence, that sacred presence, right? I mean, I know I'm getting a little mystical and hokey here, but
No.
that changing my perspective on what that pressure is and that I choose to be part of the rat race within parameters of my decision
Yeah.
changes those pressures. So it's not like crushing me anymore.
Right.
And now I get to play.
Yeah.
So I don't care if I don't get that job. I don't care if I don't get that money. I need it, but it's not the only thing that's driving me. So even in a crisis, I'm able to kind of separate the downsides of that from the part of me that is just being.
Yeah.
And I know it's a long-winded answer, but
No.
man,
No.
that was such a valuable lesson. And it turned out that's kind of what Pete was telling me I needed at the beginning, very beginning, when we had that conversation at Comic Con, telling me that I really needed to go do this and I'm going to go learn some stuff. 100% right. And yeah, it was, I can't recommend it enough that no matter who you are, no matter what kind of work you do, if you can make sure to carve out time for yourself while you have the ability to truly enjoy it and play, you should do it. And
Yeah.
if you can't do it on a grander scale of a number of years like I did, I was working, I was still earning money, but my cost of living was minuscule
Yeah.
living on the boat. But you can't do that in a big chunk. If you can remember time in your work, in your week, while you're working, in your day, to make time for that just being, you're going to feel so much more confident about how you project and possess yourself in a place that is inundating you with telling you what you need and what you should want. Ta-da!
Yeah. No, I mean, I hundred
Outro.
percent back that up. I mean, it's not mystical or some kind of ethereal thing that we can imagine. This is real stuff that you can feel, can be in it, and it's a tangible thing that you can actually. And that's the thing that you boil down is choice. Choose to do outside
Yeah,
forces that are influencing you otherwise, because you think there's some kind of set way and you follow the patterns of other people, but you don't have to follow that per se. You can still work within the system and you can still do the things that are responsible for you to do, but you don't have to necessarily conform to the natural patterns that everyone else is doing. So if there's something you love to do, you will be able to go into it. But for me, it's not also even like a big kind of adventure or trip or taking myself out of that, but even from just my own sketching and drawing and doing things myself is into that what you call the summer vacation syndrome. I can take myself out of the world and put myself in that, even if it's only for half an hour, and it's completely rejuvenating. So I think a lot of people don't allow themselves to do so because they feel like it's not responsible or they feel guilty by doing that. And they shouldn't, because that's the kind of stuff you need to have as a way to be able to continue to endure the life aspect of things at you that you can't control. And if you don't have that centered side of enjoying what you do, then that overtakes it. You get completely crushed by that. Hard to stand back up. So I've watched you. We've had a lot of conversations and stuff. I think that's the one thing that you've always been able to do was just to stand back up, man. You get knocked down so many times, and I've seen it countless times during high school and beyond. And we have. I'm sure you have your own perception of how you view me and stuff like this. It seems like there's a lot of fortunate stuff that happens, and I don't disagree with you. I've been very fortunate with stuff that have happened in time. You can probably feel that you haven't been given those things, and I see a different perspective, which is been given something, but you've been also be able to find it for yourself. Have that own strength. You're able to still endure all of this craziness that happens. So, we had a question here from Jed Decker, which is kind of associated to this. Hearing about the hours of both of you put into Art Center, making you question about if you're putting enough hours into where you want to get so as a self-taught artist, but with a full-time job. Is there any advice to that? I think our conversation that we're having, me and Izzy, the idea that we're still connected, we still have conversation, we're peers, friends, we're anything else, and so I want to hear the stuff that he's going through, also work on the things that I want to work on. He gets to work on what he gets to work on. We get to share that experience and information, but we have a dialogue and a friendship and a network and a community of people that are also beyond this. So if we don't have that kind of, I guess, community around you as well too, like-minded people, we're different but also very similar in a lot. in terms of how we think and how we experience life. We come from different worlds, but we're also still very connected in this. Even when we're young kids, and I think up. But I think Jay Decker, if you don't have that as well too, if you don't really have that kind of community of people, friends or otherwise, even family, it makes it really hard. So regardless of how many hours you're putting into it, more about do you have the right support system in addition? Because Izzy was talking about this idea. He's a competitive spirit, but I'm the same way. I'm super competitive too. I was very jealous of Izzy, so I wanted to do the things that he was doing.
And I was super jealous of you.
But that's what we feed off of. It's in a friendly way. I want him to succeed, and I'm happy to see him succeed in things. So I want to push that more. But you need to have that as well too. So that's and that advice is very general, I guess, still, and it's not easy to find. It's not like you can just walk out the door and just find people and build that kind of network. But you need to find more people around you. Essentially, that's the thing that really affected my whole thing. Like Izzy, that I've had, guys like Norm otherwise. And those things are the things that are catalysts how I had those similar experiences that you've had. Also even traveling as well. We were able to find our zones, true to what we want. Yet at the same time, integrate ourselves within society of a system of play upon work and jobs and money and that kind of thing. We have to do. It's not like we're saying give up everything and be a vagabond in some homeless street. I, mean, I guess you could, and people can still do that and come back from it. But, it's within your level of comfort zone.
I think kind of to lean in on that, Jay Becker, you're concerned about putting in enough hours to get where you want to be as a self-taught artist while having a full-time job. That's I think what Pete is alluding to there is a prime aspect in terms of keeping that spirit of competition going, but also motivation. Um, Having been in a similar position where I would have to have multiple jobs, we talked earlier about the debt that I had getting out of school. I had to have so many jobs. When I was working at Sony, I was working at Sony. I had two or three freelance jobs. I was teaching at two or three places and teaching online, and all of that, during the week. So I had insane hours at that time.
Yeah.
And it is, I'm not going to lie to you, it is hard to be self motivated and to force yourself to work, especially when you're tuckered out from the job. So one of the places that you can really find that rejuvenation is in our community that Pete's talking about. Finding a friend or a small group. I don't recommend joining like a massive group. That can be overwhelming in and of itself. But if you can find a few, one like-minded person that also just wants to grind on stuff and make it a game and make it fun for yourself, it will prove in the long run to be more valuable than just grinding alone and treating learning as a job. There's a lot of documentation in science and psychology that talks about play as learning, and I agree with that sentiment 100% when it comes to art. Fine, we were talking about competition earlier. Both of us have very competitive spirits, and it's what brought us together and also inspired that mutual jealousy and all of that stuff. You got to find the right kind. That was a sense of play that worked with us. It's like apes or dogs just duking it out and playing wrestling. It was the artistic equivalent of wrestling, trying to kind of like one up. That style of play worked for us. Find a style of play that works for you, and make your art part of that, so that you are not inundated with the self teaching as a job. The more you can pull yourself away from perceiving what you're trying to do for yourself in this extracurricular activity as work, better off you'll be. If you can turn it into play, find somebody that will play with you. Not only will you get all of the skill sets that you're looking to develop and sharpen, but you will also develop a relationship that's going to be paramount in your growth as a professional when you make the shift from your day job currently towards doing more and more art. So hopefully that does help out.
Yeah, um, one of those things I guess we kind of also naturally just grow into. It's not like you can just circumstance where you are, just happen to who you meet. Like that's why it's hard to reply to as giving. This is not any kind of experiences that we've had. All you can really
Yeah,
do is just see it as an example. You have to kind of find your own way, and this is one of those cases where, as an instructor, also I tell students you have to kind of discover it. Tell you otherwise, and either will or you won't, based on chance sometimes. But your
hmm
activity, your proactiveness, is going to increase the potential of have these kind of engagement, finding people. So yeah, as he said, it's not easy. Bust your ass to get there. Balance, as he said, is important. Have other interests in our lives. We can also procrastinate in ways that we want to. We have our interests of things to play. So it's not to say we're constantly working 24/7. Maybe it's because I'm not, honestly. I've been working most of the day today, but I still play a lot of games. And you probably
yeah,
remember during Art Center days, I used to play a lot of games while we were working. So
yeah.
um, that's just the way it was. I think it's fine to also fall into your hobbies and interests after, and not kind of demonize it in any way because somebody doesn't agree with the work. I don't know. Where does your name Izzy
I think
come from? I didn't want to interrupt
where
you.
does Izzy come from?
Yeah.
Izzy is a nickname that was given to me in elementary school because people can't pronounce my name.
Mm.
It's been it took me what 25 years to finally get comfortable with the fact that just my name is so difficult for some people that they have to butcher it. But yeah, when I was very young, a friend essentially just started calling me Iz for short. My name is Ismail, Ismael. Um, for some reason, when people read it, they just come up with the most creative sounding pronunciations.
Ishmael.
But yeah, I had a friend, Ishmael, Ismail, Ismol. I've got them all. I've got them all.
Yeah.
It is just a never-ending nightmare.
Yeah.
I imagine it's the same with like a traditional Korean name, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
kind of the same deal. So is for short, and then it became Izzy. That's how we got here.
Yeah. Yeah. And nobody even knows my first name most of the time. Mostly just official record
I don't
names.
even. You've told me like 4 times, and I never remember it. What is it again?
What, my Korean name or my first name?
Your Korean name? Oh
Oh
well, Richard, right?
yeah, but nobody even really knows my first name most of the time. But he still knows me
Yeah.
by my middle name is Peter. Actually, Richard was also my dad's name, so that Korean name is Chunghun, which is hard to pronounce for most people. But yeah,
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah,
So I get it.
yeah. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember what you're about to mention or say, but there's another question here about do we believe in the 10,000 hour rule?
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, it's a yes and no. It's never so specifically black or white. So many variables in between, from situation of the individual himself, circumstances, like what you're applying it toward. It's mostly within the fundamentals of training. I think the 10,000 hour rule applies, but like I said, there's a lot of nuance there and subtlety of layers. Where if you just kind of bust your ass and work 10 hours every single day for months on end, yeah, you'll probably grow and you will get better, but you will also have the cushions for that. Physically, mentally, you'll pay for it. You won't be able to retain that kind of discipline and work forever. At some point, balance is more important to be able to actually retain consistency, not necessarily just maximizing the full throttle red line, and being able to throttle that in different ways of like when you know how to push and bend that kind of metal a little bit, and other times can be able to press it down, just go a little bit slower. It's about being able to read yourself, I think, a lot more. Being Knowing just consistency is more important than just kind of going full out. You'll end up probably just breaking yourself, and you'll physically hurt. You might damage something. I've had. You remember when we were at Art Center? I had that neck thing all the time.
Yes, I
He,
do remember that.
he had to drive me to the
Oh my
hospital. You and Fabian, who was our other roommate. I woke
yeah.
up one term one day in the morning, and I couldn't move. I was getting neck spasms because I used to draw
You
in a
had
position.
a knot
Yeah,
that was visible.
yeah,
You could see the muscle knot. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that.
So the reason why
Oh,
that would happen is because I would draw laying on my stomach, and I would be in my head position like 6, 7 hours at a time drawing it. But when we were back in high school, I went skating with you guys. One fell off the skateboard and pulled the muscle in this area. It went away, but it aggravated at the time the Art Center. So I would sit there just in that position for so long. and that muscle spasm would build. So it was like a nerve thing, a muscle thing. But he took me to the hospital because
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move, and it was such horrible pain. I had to get Demerol
Yeah.
shots. Yeah, they were muscle relaxants. So
Yeah.
that incapacitated me for a while. But again, physicality wise, I think the 10,000 hour rule by concept sounds good, but there are a lot of payoffs if you don't take care of yourself physically and which I think is
Mhm.
kind of sometimes out of balance. So, I don't know. I'll give it add to that or layers to it.
I think you nailed it. It's a balance thing.
Yeah.
The 10,000 hours rule. It there kind of was this thing that became popular. Right around when school, traditional schooling for this kind of art was starting to get poo poo, and then it kind of became about this autodidact grind set, if
Mm-hmm.
you will. Um, there are a few examples of fairly successful artists that came out of it with that mindset, and they made it, 0 to hero, and
Yeah.
it happens. But we don't hear about all of the cases of,
Mm.
and beyond the physical, there is also the emotional and mental
Right.
toll that happens when you force yourself to work on something like this.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to me, uh, to perception of how you view that thing. If you can treat those 10,000 hours as play instead of work, how you feel about it when you don't succeed for that week and however many hours you need to do it changes, and it shifts by shifting your perspective, you shift where that import lies, and it can also save something that you love. Presumably, you're getting into art because you love it and you just want to get at something that you love.
Right.
If you go the full grind set route, one of the things that isn't really warned about is that you learn to hate
Oh
the thing
yeah.
that you love.
Yeah.
And I have seen it,
Me
I
too.
have experienced it,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and I'm been the same for you, Pete. But please be careful with this mindset. If you can find a way, pull it off, but shift your perspective on it so that that it isn't a job and it is more play, so that you don't end up hating this thing that you
Yeah.
once loved. That is even sadder to me. People that have, tennis elbow or shoulder problems from this,
Right.
or a neck issue. That sucks. But man, hating something you once had a passion for is the saddest story.
It is.
There was a question up here. I think what tends to be the most enjoyable moments or phenomenon in art for you guys personally? I thought that was a pretty good question. How about that, Pete?
Yeah.
Also, favorite vape flavor. I'll get to that.
um, favorite enjoyable moments or phenomena in art. Again, I think it goes back to our connections to people that we've crossed and people that we've lost as well too. And it's that part of reminding you of first of the mortality of things, that your time is limited. I think it's just a continual reminder to really enjoy the present moments. And through art, it gives us a chance and a special able to just go inversely in ourselves and really kind of explore these passions of interest of the things that we do. Not everybody has capacity nor of that level of interest in engagement of a centered focus, where a lot of people have a kind of a sporadic look in things. They want that and try this and they get lost a little bit. But we have that opportunity to be able to really center it and find like-minded people, which, like I said, it just kind of brings everything back down to earth a little bit. I don't get lost in fantasy, and I certainly don't feel like I'm overly serious, which I come off across sometimes. I do enjoy the fact that my past endeavors, no regrets to anything at all, but created those amazing moments to just meet amazing like-minded. Even like the stuff we're talking about right now, how Izzy had mentioned about the balancing issues and being able to have fun with the stuff that we're going for. Everything he's mentioning is exactly the same way I would talk about stuff. But we've never really had like actual conversations to share dialogue. And hey, this is how I say this stuff, and this is how. This is just because it overlaps because it works. Works. That we're gonna find those kind of same commonalities, approach them, and even like in technique, same thing. Like I would maybe learn a technique on how to draw something. Somebody can explain it the same way, even though we didn't have were friends or show each other or learn from each other. We come to the same conclusion. Conclusions are brought together from the experiences of. have when I hear stuff like this from him or other people, it just further validates the stuff that I try to promote and try to do is in the right direction. So the phenomenon is about being able to have the grouping of individuals with the same kind of energy that comes together. Really don't take that for granted because in the beginning when I was younger, as Izzy may know, I was normally very reserved and very distant and quiet, and I didn't want to find people. I didn't like people, you know. Um, but as I gotten older, I've come to much more appreciate the side of connecting with, sharing more, because I wouldn't speak up because to me, my voice didn't matter. That's the change that I had to make over the many years, where being open to be able to share, and that's why stuff like this was such a revelation in terms of the enjoyable moments that I can have those moments, engage in that way. And over time, it took a while to get to that point of mentality, openness, but I think that side of finding and is really hard. Yeah, that jobs are fun and making money and having or connecting with people that way is great too. Having an audience, but for me, it's actually creating with individuals in the same way I like to approach life. So
Great answer. Yeah, that's tough. Tough. Cannot top that. That's a good one. I think in the same vein for me, the moments are the most satisfying ones for me are when I'm not there. When I'm completely engulfed in the work
yeah,
or when I'm completely engulfed in the conversation. I found teaching to be
oh yeah,
profoundly enjoyable, and I didn't think I would. I was really scared of teaching. I was so nervous. I
oh
was
I
so
was too.
nervous the first day that I had a class in front of me. I was trying to read them the syllabus, and I forgot how to read. Literally forgot how to read. I was so nervous. Full on 30 seconds of me standing there staring
Yeah.
at all these kids, a total jackass. But over time, I really learned to kind of like accept it and get into the groove. And it was kind of what Peter was talking about, like those relationships and things like that. It is the intercourse of that conversation that allows me to be present. So, like for example, this conversation we're having right now is a prime example of me finding a very enjoyable moment in
Yeah,
art.
100%.
Talking with all of you, yeah, like there's this. It's not just about the art. It's cheesy to say, but there's like that lifestyle aspect to it
Yeah,
that requires the ability to, and I think this is kind of what you were saying too, Pete, is to um, cut out the egoic
yeah,
and make it about that intercourse, that interaction
yeah.
directly with another person in terms of discussing, teaching, learning,
Mm,
and also the intercourse of creation where like you are drawing, creating, painting, whatever, and being just there in that moment. Like
right,
that's
right.
so enjoyable.
And
Yeah,
you know,
I love that.
to add to that, it's the idea that this engagement of conversation it is still creative to me, even though we're not literally drawing right now. The engagement and the energy built from it is going to help me create the enthusiasm and the drive to go and actually apply this and work on later today, maybe. If I do or
Yeah.
don't, it doesn't matter. But the fact is, that I had that reserve now energy been built up that I can things that I have to maybe jobs I got to go for, even just for fun. But it's enthusiastic, and I think they're all tied together. So I'm with friends and going out and traveling, or go to a bar and have a drink with else, draw on your own side of things, or play with toys, or play games, or watch movies. All those things are to me are interconnected. Experience of it.
I think what Pete just said to build on that even further is a great point and kind of answers some of the questions that came earlier about, burnout and working and things like that. Learning to re-energize yourself with this kind of present conversation is super valuable. I'm totally walking away from this, inspired to go and get back to work because this is an energizing experience, and having that group of people that you can get this buzz with, create, and to just like inspire is so invaluable.
Yeah. Anyways,
Favorite vape flavor was
mm.
this one is it's like some what's the word? It's a designer vape shop where they make their own flavors, but this one's pear and menthol or something like that.
That's
Sorry
it.
to take us back to the way back machine.
Yeah. That's fine. Go ahead.
We got that one.
Yeah.
Andrew, welcome, dude. Jealous in the nicest way possible. Uh, Thanks, Andrew. It's always awesome seeing your work. Andrew was a student of mine when I was teaching it.
Oh, is that right?
He has gotten quite a name for himself. Yeah. Talia's brother's name is Ismail.
Natalia was one of my students.
Oh, cool.
In this group, I'm sure there's just mostly students and people that
Yeah, hey,
be that.
that's great. It's interesting that like that just happens on its own. And it's like just live long enough and create long enough that you end up just kind of creating these relationships with people over time. I dig it. Yeah.
So, what's next? Day, tomorrow, even like here?
What's next for me? So, I am currently one of the scripts that I worked on a while back. I'm stopping right now.
Okay.
Um, and I'm really hoping that something picks up with that. There's a little bit of interest in Korea.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, we can get into that later if you like. But yeah, that's a cool thing. In keeping with that, I actually was just sitting down for this to outline a new script. I've got another story that I'd started when I was living in Mexico and see if there was any meat to it.
Mhm.
So kind of doing a little bit of research right now.
Yeah.
Near future, I am actually actively looking for the next gig. I'm still feeling the draw to like
Yeah.
collaborate
Yeah.
on a big project. I don't know why. It's just I miss it,
Yeah.
So I had a gig back in here that wrapped consultant creative director. So something along those lines is kind of what I'm shopping for right now is creative leadership of some kind at a studio, game,
Right.
animation, whatever. But like I said, I'm not holding my breath. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep making stuff, keep talking, keep teaching. I'm hoping to get back onto streaming more. I was streaming pretty frequently there, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
And then I had kind of a little resurgence this last year, and work kept getting in the way. But I am hoping reignite that kind of as of today.
Mm.
And I think the plan is I was originally, for those of you that don't know, Twitch was doing it, like I said, pretty frequently. Now, I think I'm going to switch to YouTube, which is where I've archived all of those Twitch things.
Right.
So if you look down below in the description for this video, there's my contact info. So if you want to see videos of me covering, painting, drawing, philosophy, silly stories, all sorts of things, that's all archived on my YouTube here on Izzy Medrano. And that's going to be the short-term focus, that and just writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about.
Good.
Yeah. Hope to hear what you think about these different ideas later.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'd love to hear them. I know they were still in building some of the story ideas from the past. You've been building short story wise and what. I don't know if Maggot was still something that you were pursuing or not, but had the other.
I'm not, it's not that I'm pursuing it. To me, we came up with this idea, and then I wrote like I feel like it's a solid short story, and then I wrote a really in-depth sort of plot line for like a film narrative. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Reading that. And that's kind of where it's been sitting for, God, how long has it been? 10 years?
Yeah,
something
wow.
like that.
Yeah. And then what did you move on to after that one? It was Collar.
Collar.
Yeah.
Collar's the one that's gaining interest right now.
Okay, good.
So I wrote a pilot and I wrote a Bible for it. I did a bunch of early art. I've always felt like there was something to it that could be picked up. It was just about finding the right spot. So fingers crossed, there'll be good news on that front in the future.
Do you want to put out an art book at all?
I'd like to, but I just feel like I don't have anything. I don't have anything to show. It's all old. New stuff is either under NDA or isn't really. What I need to do is practice what we've been preaching. So maybe you'd be down for working together again and doing some projects or something.
Yeah.
We can find somebody locally. Mindy Lee, do you remember her?
Oh yeah.
She just moved up here. She's in Portland now, and I'm hoping to hang with her and Lee was a friend of hers that was actually a guy I worked with in my last gig,
Mm,
and they're great,
mm.
awesome artists, both of them. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to hang with them more, to kind of get what we've been talking about
Yeah,
and start building up that friendly, competitive nature, challenges and things like that, and start getting back into making some stories with some local art friends. We're obviously always invited because I
yeah,
feel
for
like we
sure,
make
man.
awesome
Yeah,
stories
yeah.
together.
I mean that, and
But yeah,
just even putting out like small art books or art books that are more just centric to you. Like I still talk
yeah,
to guys like Spirit and Alive, publishes a lot of books. I always self-published a lot of my stuff. I think art books still are such a popular thing. I don't remember or haven't really seen something that just your work. I know there's like a lot of old stuff you
sure,
might have, but you might just need to generate work for that specific out
yeah,
stuff or just a sketchbook or something. I mean, these days, I mean, it'd be nice to from you, but also a lot of other friends. I wish you guys like Aaron Lamonic, who hasn't really put out a book either. Too, I wish he would put out one. Several other people, but it's market that I think is rich and widely available for the pick. I don't know.
do you teach like a bookmaking class, like how to plot and plan out like what you're gonna? I know I remember I've seen your cork board, right? And like
Yeah,
plan out. Do you ever cover that? Like I'd
in my
love to take
classes,
that class.
I do a ton of sketching. I mention it back when I was teaching it at Art Center. I would talk a lot about this publishing stuff. Those students that would have at Art Center were it was mandatory for them to actually make a for dynamic sketching. So it was all the work curated for the homework that's put together, but printed and put together in a way for a professional. It can almost be like an actual book you can almost sell. Some of them were themed, some of them were handmade, some of them were printed from other spots. But talking about how they would do like graphic layouts and themes of the books and if they're storytelling or not. How would you then print it? Where would you go to print it? What are some self-publishing things you could do? So it's mentioned. I don't really have a course on it, but these are things that obviously I just did on my own. I think a book that you would make on Kickstarter would still do great, honestly. Just being
Yeah.
obviously marketed the right way, and you just have a good idea as to what the book is. So, like my next book, personally, I have two books in plan right now. One is going to be the dynamic sketching book again with Super, and I have another book which is that kind of biological natural history book that's fantasy based. So I collect a lot of notes of fantasy animals I'm seeing on an island, and it's from a character's perspective. It'll be a collection of all these like drawing sketches of a journalistic approach that documents all these animals and creatures that he's seeing. So that kind of stuff I usually just self-publish on my own. Um, so just
Mm-hmm.
having the idea first is really the key. Yeah, you can just have it be an art book, sketchbook, like curate the work over time, or use old stuff. Having things like themes and genres or settings can also be really good as well. You already have a lot of the great kind of character centric kind of work. It's kind of like even when we back in the day at Art Center did that one like the
Yeah.
serifs and all that kind of stuff. Stuff like that probably would do
Mm-hmm.
pretty well.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting approach. I'm always a little concerned with Kickstarter because it's such a pass fail thing.
Yeah.
But I, I like the idea. I feel like you've always been really good at finding like a. You are awesome at scope. You
Hmm.
know, like you're able to go. This is what I need to fill,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm gonna make.
Right.
And I have this terrible habit of being like, I want to do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. I
and
get that.
then I got to do this, and I have to be solely responsible for. This is
Right.
actually kind of struggle that I'm having right now. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I was talking about writing earlier on this
Yeah.
project. It's like, okay, I want to make a comic. I want to write, but if I'm going to make a comic, I should probably just do the art. I'm an artist. Why don't I just do the art? But then I have to do lettering, and I got to do this, and
Yeah.
that, and then it's like it's I am one of those people that has a terrible habit of overwhelming myself by
Yes.
going way out of scope
Yeah.
really fast.
Yeah.
I am a master of breaking stuff. And I feel like that's like this is my next big challenge, especially if I'm going to do something like a book project, which I desperately want to do. I feel like I have good ideas and I feel like I've
Oh,
got
for sure.
something to say, right? And I feel this is true of everybody, but
Yeah.
during my age, I really should start kicking something out. but it's that scope issue I'm so struggling with, like
Mm,
how to manage my own
yeah.
vivid imagination
Yeah. Yeah.
and make sure I am just tackling this small thing,
Hmm.
making the statement, making my product,
Yeah.
which is the big,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting it out.
Yeah.
That's you are so good at that. How many books have you put out now? Like 12?
Around that or
You're
more.
easily in the double
Yeah.
digits
Yeah.
now. Yeah,
In varying degrees,
like
small and larger.
impressive.
But it's I think it's like that same concept of, you have big dreams in your life and you're trying to find that job. Get there, you or take it through short goals, essentially small things
Yeah,
to build up to that momentum that eventually can meet up to that satisfaction that you're trying to achieve as an accomplishment. But still, having at least something done gives you this release a little bit, and it builds that energy back up of confidence to like pursue something a bit bigger. But if you don't have that kind
yeah,
of build up momentum, and then all of a sudden you're tackling something very massive, it's not going to feel overwhelming. It's going to feel possible. It's not even a possibility of thought that you can even approach this as an endeavor. That you feel like you need a whole team now to do. But like as you said, yeah,
exactly.
the scope is important and being realistic about it. But it's not to say that being realistic sacrifices, things that you feel that you want to achieve. Just being realistic and compromising certain parts to make sure you can also get it done. And I think
Hmm.
having realistic goals of time sense, for me, I always say a book shouldn't take more than a year from beginning to end. But depending on the project you're working on, from the scope that you have, you're talking about a 3 or 4 year project. And
Oh,
that's
easy.
and that's the thing is
Yeah,
like, well, as an individual, I don't think that's very possible. I'm sure there are a small percentage of people that can do it, but I don't think I could do that. you know?
yeah,
So, and that's the thing. I know
yeah.
this. I know what my
Mm.
limitations are, but I also know what I can achieve. Important for me to actually at least see things to the end, so it gives me the further drive to pursue those. So in this particular project, I would say being able to adjust your outlook and goal as to what actually needs product um, will give you something more manageable, but it also helps you be able to engage in the other things you need to do as the marketing and artist person. Whether it's like going on Kickstarter, where you got to manage all that stuff, you write it, and you got to also design the book, and you have to write everything out in art creation. You got to do all that stuff too. But hopefully, it's within a manageable thing because I also do all those things. It's not going to be so wildly out of control that I will be completely past my deadlines. I'll stay within that 1 year to year and a half period. Right now, like the dynamic sketching book that I need to make, I know how much time I actually even need for the books. I've done it so often. I need at least 3 months to make all the art content and writing it at the same
Wow,
time. I need about a
wow.
month to design the book, so I can get the entire book even done as an 80 page to 100 page book within half a year period. So it then takes the next half a
Jesus.
year to be able to print, to solidify the design, retype out all the font, get the printers ready. So a year cycle is really what it is, but your actual production cycle is only 6 months. Really. So it's pretty crazy. It gets really fast, but but again, the kind of thing you're making is a bit different than what I'm trying to do. Because my stuff is just notes and sketching. You're trying to do full illustrations and script writing and all that kind of stuff in the editing process,
Stories, yeah.
story. So
Whole,
it's a whole
but
nother endeavor.
you're right. Like it's still it comes down to that scope thing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, once you complete the feeling of kind of accomplishment, but that's you may not remember, but the first Lightbox, you hooked me up with Spirit in,
Yeah.
and that's how I ended up on stage talking at one of the panels.
Yeah.
And what we were talking about was imposter syndrome,
Right.
right?
Right.
And there were several of us up there, Iris and um, Marta, I think, was up
Okay.
there. God, I'm forgetting everybody else's name. It's been like 3 years,
Yeah.
but anyway, there were a bunch of people up on stage, and we're all discussing imposter syndrome, creator, and things like that. And I noted that I have an unusual version of it. I
Mm.
also have it, which I think many, if not most, artists do.
Sure. Absolutely.
But mine is a very specific one, which I think is, I don't remember the kind where I kind of see my progress as a ladder, right? Like most people do, you're climbing up and up. But as I progress, I never see how far I am from the bottom.
Mm.
I never see the growth.
Yeah.
That's where my imposter syndrome lives.
Definitely.
So I've actually, I mean, I did do a comic for Collar. I have done smaller projects just on my own,
Mm-hmm.
but I did the Sheeple Are Shy, which
Yeah.
was in the But I literally forget about them.
Yeah.
I forget about the projects that I make. So even getting one out isn't going to give me the same kind of emotional relief. Like
Mm.
runner's high. Like I don't believe there is such a thing as a runner's high, or like,
Mm.
getting high off of working out, because I've never experienced it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing where like when I'm making stuff, I want that so bad, but
Yeah.
because of that imposter syndrome, it's just something that's constantly lost on me.
Mm.
One second,
Yeah. No problem.
Bova's losing her.
It's all good. But based on what Izzy's talking about, I feel those things as well too. But it's tough because your engagement to that is so hard for me to be able to actually put my mindset into. Same thing for you, because the thing is, you could actually be experiencing it, but you just don't experience it the same way I am. So he's still having
Right.
growth and stuff, not absorbing it that same. Um, it's weird. Weird how the brain works.
It's super weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like as a when it comes to reward center with some things, that it's like it's I don't know if it's fully a mental health issue or anything like that, but just like the different perceptions
Yeah.
on success
Yeah.
and quality. These
Right.
things are all subjective to the artist, to the
Yeah.
individual. That's a relationship that each individual artist needs to develop and
Yeah.
figure out on their own. And I've learned a lot about, like, for myself, about what the measure of success is.
Yeah.
There was a time where for me it was like, got to be Guillermo del Toro. You have to be George Lucas.
Right.
If you're not working at Pixar, you're not successful,
Right.
And that was an early thought that I kind of had, and over time, the boat experience. I was
Right.
talking about things like that.
Yeah.
That was a major contributor to me understanding that success is subjective and doesn't
Sure.
need to be. It doesn't need to be a shared thing. Success can be raising a family.
Yeah.
Success can be growing a garden, or doing whatever. Getting out of bed can be a
Yeah.
success
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Yeah.
the individual. So I guess where I'm at is that I still have that comparative problem, which I think is common amongst artists. And then it's really what I've got now is, now I know. For example, I can actually say, you're a master of scope. That's what I need to get in line here, is to figure out how to make something that's in a scope that I could create. So it's good to have these kinds of conversations, because it helps me to. I can get so caught up in my head trying to make. I want to make this amazing new thing. I want to build. I want to create this idea. I have that idea. I got to make this thing. It's going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be the new Lord of the Rings, right?
Right.
But these kinds of conversations are great. This is why I love having you around, man. And I miss this on a regular basis, but it really helps me kind of really center and figure out that scope and kind of find what am I capable of with a short time period that I want to outline in order to create a thing. And this has been a very inspiring conversation in that respect. So thank you for having me on, for sure. This is.
Do you have a hard time letting things go sometimes when you produce something? Let's say you finish it and you look at it and you see, let's say, something you don't like. That how you only perceive a negative thing as an output for the next round? Do you have a hard time just even enjoying and celebrating the thing, regardless of quality?
No, I don't have. I love making a thing, and for those that have watched me painting, on the YouTube channel and on Twitch, I am very genuinely driven by the glee of making the thing in the moment. Like,
Okay.
if it's not making me cackle with joy because it's so absurd or stupid or silly or sexy, then it's not a really fun painting for me. I'll usually end up abandoning it, or drawing or design stuff. But there are, in my mind, I kind of treat like painting a silly monster as different than making a story. And there's this shift that happens when I start writing, where like I become. I mean, you've probably always known this about me, that I'm a ridiculous perfectionist.
Yes,
like
that's what I'm alluding to.
Relentless on myself.
Yeah.
I'm sure many people experience. I know you experience this too. I am ruthless with my own stuff.
Yeah.
So once it's done, once I've had kind of the glee of making a thing, I don't even look at it.
Really
There are
interesting.
hundreds of paintings I have. I've never posted, never shown anybody. I made it, made me laugh. It is not good. You know, like
Yeah.
that's that imposter syndrome thing
Yeah. So that's
where
what
it's
I'm
just
asking
like
about.
this,
Yeah.
this isn't worth showing to people
Right.
because it's not
Right.
saying anything. It's not doing
It's interesting
anything. Yeah,
because
it's weird.
I feel different because whenever I produce stuff, whether it's a sketch or a printed thing, let's say it's like a book from the past number of years ago, and it's a book that I've made, I still enjoy looking at it and I enjoy sharing it. And yes, there's obvious improvements that have to be made, and there's a level of quality because of the current time of when I made it that was kind of error. But I still like bringing it out. Even when I make, let's say, like the book I'm making right now, the current Dynamic Sketching Bible, if I produce it and I make it and it gets published, I like promoting it. I enjoy sharing it with people as an end result where I don't look at it saying, oh, I need to fix this or I shouldn't have done that. And I want to adjust that part of it and constantly up the quality of level of things. But I leave it as its own entity, its own kind of experience, and it stays as it is. And I see the positive elements of it and keep celebrating that as a continuance over the years. So even as a book that's made from like 2008, I'll share that one crappy little sketchbook that I made for Comic Con, a small little photocopied book. And even though it's crappy, but I still love the experience of making it, sharing the ideas of what I got from there to here. So I don't know. It's a different mindset that I have from you. I don't
Yeah,
discard it. I don't forget about it. It's always something there that I don't mind seeing all the time.
yeah. I don't think for me it's not that it's my ignoring a thing that I've made after I've made it isn't because I don't think it was of quality,
Mm,
and me not feeling the need to share it isn't necessarily because of quality.
yeah,
It's because some part of me decides that it's not saying anything.
I see.
You know what I mean?
I mean, not
There's this
relevant?
part of me that like, yeah, it doesn't have. I'm not communicating something with this that is
Oh,
like
huh.
of value. You know,
Interesting.
like I expect some level of profundity with
Oh,
whatever I'm making. And if it's just like
yeah,
if it's like a cute thing that I made and I'll put it up, sure, why not? If it is, there's like different qualifiers. So if it's
right.
good and cute, meaningless, I'll post it.
Yeah.
But if it's good but or if it's okay but meaningless, I probably won't post it. Like
So, yeah,
the meaning to me or the ability to glean some kind of depth from
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And a lot of it has to do with story because I'm such a story nerd
yeah.
that if it's not delivering on that, if it feels,
Empty?
what's the word I'm empty, insipid, if
Yeah.
it feels insipid, like
Mm,
I'm just, it's, this is a terribly rude thing about me, but like for me, if it doesn't say something, then what is the value in sharing it? And it
right,
is why I don't share. When I do like fan art or something like that,
right.
I tend to never show that stuff
Yeah,
because I feel like all I'm doing is just
yeah,
right, like what is unique about
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
So there's this kind of again, this is that like ridiculous standard that I
Exactly.
give myself. It's
Right,
just
right.
not fair.
It isn't.
You know,
It
I
isn't.
can't. I'll never be able to please myself with that
Yeah.
stuff.
No, no, no.
Like, yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to. So that's kind of what you were saying before. If I can, that'll be my challenge for the next month.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to really focus on this. I'll spend some time thinking about this. Like, how can I manage scope and let something like that go? Because you're
Right.
right. Just there is value in sharing this stuff. There is value in like showing the process and the
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
It's just something that I never think about.
Right.
I'm always out here,
Yeah.
you know, thinking about what can I do next? What's the next big thing that I want to just make room for it?
Yeah.
And I really need to kind of quiet that down a little bit and
Yeah.
think smaller, you
Yeah, I
know?
would agree with
Yeah.
that. And you can have all those big scope of ideas as well too, which will progressively grow. But you definitely need to have those moments of bring it down to smaller and manageable in that sense. Because you'll never feel satisfied then anything you create. I understand the idea of having some value of what you're trying to express and say. For me, I think a way to control this is that I always create a sense of intent. I intend to do
Mm-hmm.
this action or I intend to do that action. So if I'm intending to go with something that has a bit of value, obviously I'll invest the time into it because I'm allowing myself to do so. If I'm intending to just create a piece of work because I just want to put together something together and sell it, then I already know my end goal. I already know my intention. So with that, I'm able to kind of
Smart.
save myself from falling into it, going into beyond that I don't need to. I spend that time to exert myself to capture this thing that I don't really even know. And I'm able to kind
Mm-hmm.
of keep that reservation a little bit to achieve the goal, what I'm intending to start from the beginning. To get that done, I can make the choice of what I'm going to work on next. So have more value or not, whatever that's going to be in the moment of time of my choice, I'll do so. But it has to have a clear sense of drive of direction to go to as a production, as a produced piece product. So
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
I mean, we just I just described the things that kind of drive me as I'm going, and it's very much kind of almost random. My whole creative system is a leaf on the wind. Like whatever's gives me the giggles at the time is what I'm going to do.
yeah,
Um, I'm not the only time I tend to be focused on this sort of problem solving thing is when I'm being paid to do it,
yeah.
and that's probably a bad that's a bad professional habit to
Mm,
have. And I that's something I have to think about, right? Like when you go in with a focus, you get a focus problem.
right.
You know, to some level, that's true, and that's definitely something I've been guilty of. I think the reason, not to totally talk my weasel my way out of that, but part of that has been that the only time that I was ever doing this kind of activity was when I was working a full time job
Yeah,
and I wanted to go and do something really for myself, and I've let that kind of take over a little bit.
yeah.
That's certainly the more dominant thing. But yeah, I think if I can narrow down like concept and just try and build it out. For you, this is kind of a question, by proxy for everybody else, but for you in making these books of yours, you found greater success in sort of like the random sketchbook where it's just a collection of pieces, or have you found greater success with a more focused, like not quite narrative, but like a through line for a story or a concept that sells that specific collection?
Well, I think they're connected together for me. When I produce something, the previous book to the one afterwards can actually build on top of each other. So it could be, let's say, like an art book that has thematic nature, visual images, or things I'm just drawing for fun, and germinate storyline or creation of something of value on that sense, book or story or comic or something. Like the blacksmith started off with just a bunch of random arbitrary drawings and sketches. That was a collection of pieces in a sketchbook that I sold, which was, it did well. And then I from there went into comic because of interest. So I'm also then listening to what people want combination. So not only about what I want to produce, but also what people want to have. So it's a combination of reading the data of the audience, being able to pursue also my interests of things, and having that balance of, I can just create whatever I want to, and buy it or they won't buy it. But if I can also read that data a little bit, I can then start to pick and choose my next kind of project that aligns with already a primed kind of market. Then when I generate and produce it and put it out there, the potential guarantee of success. I
Mm-hmm.
can almost predict that if I pursue this particular book, it's going to do fine. Like the book I'm going to pursue next of my own personal endeavor, that kind of natural biological kind of. I already know that if I produce that book right now and put it on Kickstarter, I know it's going to be good because I've already primed the audience in the market of showing this kind of stuff. It wasn't a content from before, but I'm also using other mediums to share that work, generate that book after. So yeah, it really wasn't one or the other that was more successful or not, whether it's a story driven thing or just artwork. Both have been great, but like I said, it was definitely interconnected. That is what given me this most success so far. But I would say, of course, education does do a lot better because first of an audience in the market. Story stuff can be a little bit difficult because you're going to know a very kind of specific niche of people. So in a sense, I think inherently it's a bit more difficult on that route of story sell. Whereas things like regular sketchbooks and what they have, that in itself I think creates a bit of difficulty.
So to kind of continue down that line of reasoning, but at a subordinate level almost, but also again in that in my experience dealing with potential bookmakers and things like that, there's been discussion of followers.
Mm.
Like you shouldn't even bother putting together a book, Izzy. You don't have 100,000 followers, so the sales aren't even going to warrant it. Like,
Right.
when do you think it's a good time to start doing something like that? Because in my case, like, yeah, I'm an established artist, but I don't have a big fan base online. But should I focus more on building that fan base first in order to get the support that you're talking about on Kickstarter, or should I just make a book?
No,
Like,
no.
who do I
Um,
sell the book to if I don't have any fans, right?
it comes down to the idea and the content, not the amount of followers you have. In terms of the follower aspect of it, you have to think of it in a different way of how social media should work, which is about reach. Reach is not based on only your platform, but the other platforms that you're connected to, people that you know. So, yeah, you might have, let's say, whatever number of followers on Instagram, which is 12K or something like that. But could you potentially
Yeah.
use other platforms, let's say my platform, help channel through and promote that potential product? That then you have access to also my audience, of course. So to
Ah,
say that you're just reserved to just 12,000 followers is not necessarily true. You have other people that you can help promote your stuff out there if they're willing to do so. Of course, doesn't mean everybody has access to these people, but you knowing me and me knowing others have that potential to kind of channel it out there. So even for me, when I first started with, let's say, like the early chalk book, the part of my dust book, I only had what, less than 10,000 followers on Instagram. And the Kickstarter only made a certain amount of money because it capped it, but that probably would have done really well because the idea was sound. But it was also because of the other channels of things I was using, things like video, and I was making things like these kind of documentaries. The other mediums help promote out there. So Kickstarter is a social media platform, but so then you would also use other things like me, Instagram, Kickstarter, all in unison where they're kind of working together to kind of further the reach of finding an audience for you. But it starts off with, again, this is one discussion that we've had in the past, which is the fact that one, the content that you generate obviously is also for specific types of people that are interested in the work. It may not be for general public. So that in itself also might limit the amount of people that are willing to spend to buy the product that you're actually producing. Um, which, if we look at things like what I'm producing as education, because it's so open market for anybody to take up, it's probably going to sell just better, which is why story is difficult, especially when it comes to genre types or stylistic things. You have a certain amount of people that you're really maybe tapping into. Um, but regardless of all that, I think starting just now, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. Starting now and actually having an actual product is really the more important thing. You have an idea, you have the product, but then you can engage with the different individuals and people to help you. So I wouldn't be worried about that at all in terms of whether you have enough followers or not to get in the market people. I don't think that would make it. It can make a difference, of course. Yeah, if you had hundreds of thousands of followers, yeah, it's a huge plus, absolutely. But not everybody has that. And from me, as whatever followers that I have, there could be other people that have way more followers than I do. I'll then use their channels. Say, hey, like we work together. I know you. I work under you. Can I help you or have you help me, promote this stuff aside? Which is, the benefit of what I've been associated with, like Super Money, like E Group and stuff like this. So that helps me get my work out there by myself. I would still be able to procure a certain amount of people. I need others to do it. So people are really.
so what you're saying is like the crux of getting other people with a larger uh, market or base to potentially, kind of forward your stuff out
Yeah. Yeah.
to their crowds is if you have a product.
Yes.
Okay? You can't count on them being like, "This is an awesome piece."
Yeah.
Check out Izzy's stuff.
Yeah.
It's much better to have something, and then
Yeah.
that core thing would be easier to kind of get your friends to share
For sure.
and hopefully build out the awareness for whatever it
Absolutely.
is you're trying to create.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
I
and that
think.
makes sense.
I mean, I think people want something to consume, as always. If it's a product, great.
Content.
Yeah. And so you need to have that piece to dangle in front of people in some ways. Vice versa. If we're talking just about promotions, like, hey, just follow this person. I could share your work. But that's happening within thousands and thousands. You have something that does stand out from that, which is an actual viable product that people can actually own, and something that can maybe even use as their own inspiration or whatever the case is. People are going to want to follow you for a certain reason, not just because your work looks great, but because it's something they can, whether it is inspiration as a visual or from educational standpoint. I can do that also. I can follow what this person. So if your book has elements of this, whether it's a story inspiration or if it's artistic inspiration, educational value, having an actual product that supports that as a viable piece is easier to promote, but then also people can, I don't know, I think it helps definitely to have a product.
Makes sense. Have you, like, in your experience? So you already stated, like, from your direction, the the angle that you take for your products is more, but not only catering towards an educational hook.
Mm.
Uh, Obviously, you have blacksmith, you've
Yeah,
got
yeah,
world of fish or forest of fish,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you have all of these great like little stories and
yeah,
vignettes of concepts that you're
right,
building and growing and growing.
right.
But your primary hook would be the educational one. I say it's a
Sure.
fair argument.
Absolutely.
What, in your experience, have you seen from other artists that have tried to do what we're talking about right now? What other kinds of hooks do you think have been the most effective? Like, it's one thing to kind of just make a story or a comic that's yours, but like, is there anything that you've seen that is more, that hits a little bit harder or has the same kind of impact that an educational hook might have?
I mean, we can state it in maybe two ways. One being the obvious, which is something that is recognizable, a trend or a popular look or styling or whatever the case might be. So if it aligns with current trends or popularity, obviously that will be noticed a lot faster. Now, of course, you yourself can say, but I don't generate that kind of work, so that's not really what you're applying to. That's obvious. You wouldn't do that. So we can't rely upon that as a way to hook an audience by using a style set or a look or a visual idea that is in alignment to things that are really popular right now. If that's not the case. I think another one is being able to also use things like presentation. If the work is presented in a way where it's not just an artist kind of collaging stuff together, where it feels much more professional, where it feels official, feels almost like licensed kind of stuff. I think we have that ability to generate work that feels on that part of that professionalism. It's work that people can trust, that they have confidence in. That sense of confidence and building a confidence trust within a market to you, it takes time to build it, but then people seek it more. So, like I said, I can use education because of my confidence behind it as a channel to bring people in, but also to introduce them to the other things that I have within. Um, so, other products that I generate, other little books or story ideas or whatever. But yeah, having that kind of presentation, I think, is a factor because people can read it from a visual. They have that first impression. It looks, something that official or just kind of like some artist kind of doing it on the side. It's not really invested into. I think that read of the energy where someone feels that there's actual confidence behind the work itself. I myself look at work and feel that. It makes me stick with it and make me want to know more about it, or I just kind of bypass it. That looks whatever. Of course, even similarities or duplicates of stuff, as we talked about, is not going to help either too, because you get lost into the sea of all the something based on uniqueness, something that stands out a little bit. This is variable stuff that's kind of impossible to predict. You seem to sometimes have an idea that kind of clicks, but education really is the fastest way because there's a large market for that and more universal. But besides that, if it's just ideas that are very kind of alignment to people what they find as attractive, aesthetic, or cute, or whatever the case is that they like, you might find a bigger audience in some areas. But again, if that's not work, do in that situation. And I think that's the problem that you've had where you like to, you have a passion behind the kind of stories you want to tell, or your own experiences or things that you have interest towards, but not everybody aligns with the interest. Something that you would kind of
Very
fought
true.
with. That's a
Yeah.
hard sell sometimes. So then using different kind of products to be able to channel people in something that is going to hook them, and you can't treat it as if you're kind of selling out kind of thing. You have to sometimes create these kind of products as a way to attract the eyes that can introduce these other things you have in your collection of product or work. So if it is
Mm-hmm.
education, because that is one of the things you do have. You are a teacher. You taught from them. And we've discussed this as well too. Like, well, how do I package it? Video, tutorial, or something like that. Book is a case. Do I teach? Well, it's all based on your interest, but maybe it's also more approachable to a general audience, something that is consumable and that fundamental, maybe some basic, kind of an easy sell and easy buy kind of, which then can attract. And I think that's something that I would say probably be helpful. But in terms of examples of people that are doing this as well too, I think the one thing that people are mostly doing is using, like I said, connected networks and platforms that I'm talking about, where they friends and people that they know to help them market that stuff out. Because people have confidence in that particular channel, they're willing to invest the time to research and buy it as well. For instance, like we talked about Spirited, he has his Kickstarters have been all successful. He has a whole array of content when it comes to books. Some are like children's styling, some are more adult, and some are fantasy, the sci-fi. They're all over the place. But his background in producing these products have been consistent, but he also sells them at his level of sales. But I think people who are going through his channel are confident with the product that he makes. People are comfortable buying it a lot. But yeah, besides that, I can't think of anybody else that would actually be doing what I'm doing necessarily. Creating other stuff on the side. Who else is there really producing art books and also educational books? Know of anybody?
No, not really. No, I think you got that market cornered, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I guess, bring it back to the subjective for myself, go the educational route.
Yeah.
I mean, I've certainly put together tons of content and,
Yeah.
and have a system, and I have something to say in regards to teaching, painting,
Right.
the logic of color and light.
Right.
But it's interesting, like I was talking about earlier with this ladder system of imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
I finished essentially recording an entire, Gumroad archive
Yeah.
of all of my lessons where I have conveyed everything,
Yeah.
like the fish that's spawning, and I've
Yeah.
deposited the packet,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to go and die upstream. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's like, do I need to teach that again? Is like, and of course I do.
Yes.
Of course I've learned stuff since I've done it. Of course, but there's just this weird it's that imposter syndrome thing. Like I don't even see that I've done that thing,
Right.
so now it's
Right.
gone. Now it is no longer any kind of accreditation for me
Because it's done and gone.
But it is
so,
done.
Yeah.
It's done and gone. Like I have nothing further to say on this issue,
Right.
which is true.
No.
But interesting. That's.
But there's different ways of
That
repackaging it, different ways of being able to present it, and like I said, you've done videos, but in a book format. Different way of interpreting it. There are simple ways of being able to simplify and consolidate that information. It's really in depth in the version that you have in the video. You do a more, kind of smaller packages of those in a book format instead, which is maybe easier to make, but it still touches upon the same content and the same ways of doing stuff. But that's I guess one of the difference in fundamentals between I, where even like when I teach my classes, I've been teaching it for over 12 years, and I've been doing it over and over and over again. How many different ways can I teach that in sketching? But I do find slight, minor differences here and there. But I also just love talking about it.
Yeah.
So because it doesn't bother me to be able to go back into it and re-explain and produce more books and the same thing over again, I'm not hindered by that thought process. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, but there's also kind of a disconnect there in the topic, really, of the educational thing. I mean, in teaching dynamic sketching, absolutely there is a shit ton to cover with dynamic sketching. Also, when we're talking about what needs to go into a book on painting in terms of color theory, simultaneous contrast, all of these other elements that color and value bring into the table beyond sketching. I mean, that book is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even with the way I teach, which is a very concise, down version of the things that we learned in school. I basically took everything that I learned about painting in school and then cut out all the chaff and just give only the things that really actually make you a better painter, a better observer of light and color.
Yeah.
But even with that distilled down version of things, it's still massive.
It is, and that's
like there is a disconnect there, but yeah, I agree. I see the value in that, and maybe that is the description. It's like, oh, I'm gonna think about it. Like
Well,
I'm
yeah,
because of the thing I mentioned, I'm more drawn to creating a new story or a new concept. But
yeah.
there is something there. You're all right.
Again, you have to tackle upon these multiple things because you can definitely input your energy into the story and build this entire project. But again, if you don't have other sources of drawing attention of eyes, product, as you build that giant thing and you put it out there, you're not sharing it, you're not promoting it, you're not, doing any sort of marketing work with right now with it because you're waiting to work on it. So by the time it's done and it's out there, people have no idea beforehand, and you have no actual connection to your market. So producing these smaller chunks of things, kind of split your time towards something you might have to do. So if you can find a way to even further filter that educational content to be, this is where you have to kind of compromise a little bit. It may not meet your standards, but you're hitting to those base layers. Of just you guys just learn how to paint this and think about value structure this way, color theory, this more singular elements of books that could be even within those subjects alone, but in a very, very kind of very basic. Again, you have to consider the
Yeah.
fact that even just people who have no art backgrounds are looking at this stuff. You don't need that level of in depth into it just yet. It could be very introductory. So if you label it that way, this is introduction of just paint. You just elements and pieces, nuggets of information. You don't have to go really that in depth, and you kind of split it up in different kind of sections and issues or booklets. Is they're potentially more primed, constant production of things that as you produce a couple, it gets easier to make because now you have all the templates. Now you have all the setups, and now it's just plug and play at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a possibility of how you can produce more things. Where videos are awesome too, but like I said, I think having physical books can't beat them. I don't know, but this then gives you the chance of being able to, go to things like shows and be present to them, sell those in person. Because I think also
That's a good point.
being in person really helps a lot now because obviously with the pandemic, being able to go to shows and whatnot, market helped me tremendously. Since the time when I was doing Comic Con, being there to engage with people, it builds even more confidence as the audience, the customer to you, be present to them, and putting a face on it. It's huge, I think,
Yeah.
honestly.
It puts an intrinsic value on what it is you're making.
Yeah.
Like you're getting the feedback that this is something that is needed and wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like there's great value in making a physical product. A book is a good idea.
But at the end of the day, you have to look at it by saying, "Well, that's just not more work." It's true, it is. So it's like, where do you divide that time now? It's like right now, maybe most of your time is going into pursuing work and working in the story. But is there a way to kind of balance into your time a little bit, where that other project is going to be scoped down a little bit, and time, and then also spend the energy elsewhere, which can be a smaller thing, which could be the next product that you make. So that's why I asked about making an art book. Simple as a theme or a subject matter. It could be then, of course, about education. It's thematic based. This is how you paint animals. This is how you paint faces. It could be incorporating some of the fundamental techniques within thematic nature. It could be another way to make a book because that could be endless at that point.
Yeah. This is the problem we talked about.
Yeah.
Scope. Izzy has issues with scope.
Smaller elements. So Dave K. Draws asked about that. Like, what kind of product would you recommend? It would be books. I think books are great because, prints are awesome, but prints I've never done really well on my end. I'm sure prints do really well for others, and maybe for me, books have always been the better kind of engagement, especially if I do shows or sell them online. And books are easier to make today than it were like 20 years. I think that's the best kind of product to make. Again, the idea and the concept, and also what represents you. Put yourself out there to us. We're educators. But on the side of that, we also have these other things. For young artists, they may feel like, well, I don't know if I'm ready to like show educational work. Maybe, other thing you can be doing, which is sharing your story ideas, yes, but maybe they're not as big as what Izzy. Smaller in that sense. But there's no wrong time to start.
What we did with shotgun shells, I really liked the idea there in terms of having a deliverable. But when it comes to actually selling those ideas, because they are only ideas, they have no intrinsic value and are completely stealable.
Yeah.
According to IP law. That was one big weakness with that. Even though I loved I love just churning out IPs. IPs have no value. You have to have a product,
Yeah,
and that's where ownership lives. Don't own an IP unless there is a product associated with that IP.
exactly.
And I think that is a thing to be mindful of if you're a student trying to build something like that. Is it's just it's tough because it's when you expand into making a product that and built on. Then we were talking about scope again.
Yeah, yeah. But even then,
Yeah,
honestly, it's like even if you're building story ideas, nothing's fully really. Anybody can actually just take it. Today.
that's true.
And laws internationally can also be different. So they make a book and in China they reprint. Can't do anything about it. But in terms of that part, it shouldn't create fear of not wanting to put stuff out there. Because yeah, I understand
Yeah.
there are things you want. At the same time, if you don't act on that and share it in some degree of level, then
Mm-hmm.
you're walking into an empty void once you have that product that's all protected and copyrighted, but nobody knows about it. How do you sell
Yeah.
it at that point?
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm certainly not arguing against making the thing. What I'm saying is when we made shotgun shells,
yeah,
I thought that the approach there was we were making a thing, and therefore that thing was like a product. It was
right,
proof. It was
right.
this
Yeah, yeah,
thing that
yeah,
we could then use to sell.
for sure.
But the problem was that because none of those things was in its own a
Own
product,
exactly.
they were all ideas for products.
Right,
They
right,
didn't have the intrinsic ownership
right.
that you would have if we took any one of those
As a
projects
singular
and
book,
actually
yeah,
just made a comic
yeah,
or just
yeah.
made a story. The ones that had a story, like Maggot, Smugs, um, what was it?
Sheeple,
Oh, Sheeple or
yeah,
Shy.
yeah,
Things that had a finished product, those are no longer just IP. That is a thing.
yeah, exactly.
Whereas, like, some of the other things that we built that was just an idea,
Right,
those
right,
things don't have value. So all I'm doing in terms of, if you're out there and you're trying to make a book, is to make sure that if you make something, make sure that it is a holistic thing in and of itself,
right,
not
right,
just an
right.
idea for a thing.
Yeah,
Which is, and I'm telling this to everybody because I'm telling it to myself because as soon as we started talking about like what kind of books I could do, I started thinking about all these ideas I have, and I almost instantly went right back into making another shotgun shells.
yeah,
Like, oh, I've got all these ideas. I want to make all these different IPs, and I'm going to put them all in a book. Oh yeah, I ran into this problem before. Learn from my mistakes, folks.
yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
right, cool. Well, we are about 2 hours and 40 minutes into this chat.
Loaded.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about or want to bring up. We'll do more
You
talks in the
know
future.
what I'd love to do is for us to get back together again, like in however many weeks or a month or two or something like that, and
Yeah,
see how progress went. Because
that's
I
fine.
think I'm going to challenge myself to try and do something with the information that we've kind of
Yeah,
shared and discussed here, and
yeah,
see if I can maybe come up with something because it's got a good point here.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I got nothing to add currently. If there's any
Okay.
questions in chat, now
Yeah, I think
we're
we'll definitely
wrapping it
do it
up.
again. We'll use your channel next time. So people for sure
Sure.
check out the descriptions area for Izzy's YouTube channel and also his Instagram. Give it a follow, check it out, and of course do like on this video, subscribe if you can. For me, there's really nothing else, but I would like to be able to maybe meet up within. I'll be in Asia,
Sure.
by the way, traveling to
Oh, no
Japan.
shit.
Yeah, I'm traveling to Japan and Taiwan in April 10th. I'll be out for about 2 weeks or so. But either
Cool.
before that or after that, we'll definitely link up again. Use your
Yeah.
channel next time. Give us feedback as well to you guys in terms of like if this felt okay in terms of the feed. I know there's a bit of a delay, and I know that GoToMeeting, kind of finicky. I want to figure out more things as I go along and do this into the future with other guests that I want to have onto this channel. But for Izzy, obviously, I just wanted to bring on as one of the first to kind of like use this live chat, art talk, life talk kind of conversation because these are things that first I miss doing with him and in general with people because of course, distance and he's living in Oregon now. I'm still here in California. And we only see each other once a year, really, holidays and stuff
Yeah.
like this. So it's nice to be able to kind of link up like this to talk and chat long. But you know, I love you like a brother. So it's always good to see
Yeah.
your face.
Hey,
And
you too, man.
yeah, yeah.
Great to see you. Great to catch up and talk and Awesome hanging with chat. Thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. It's
Yeah,
fun.
for sure. All right, so we'll end it here.
Do it
Thank you
again
guys
soon.
for hanging about. We'll be back on next time. Next time I stream for some sketching and drawing, maybe next week. So look for some mentions in the scheduling on the YouTube channel or on Instagram on stories. I'll post about it. But we'll talk to you guys next time.
Take care.
We're good.